book. I'm not sure what time I will be logging in, but basically after.
Who is he talking to?
To me. There was a message on my phone.
Oh.
L'chaim, l'chaim.
Schön will ich bracha.
You got l'chaim, guys? Give me one behind me. מה את רוצה?
So give it a few minutes and then we'll see. Start.
Chaim.
Rabbi Shapiro, l'chaim. Usually by Farbrengen, we start with the niggin. That's what gets you.
Let's start, but it happened. Experience has shown that
Not working.
It doesn't work. You could try, but it doesn't work.
So the Seder Nigunim we stand before is going for this one.
Yeah.
Eliata ve'yoideka Eliata ve'yoideka Elokai memeka Keliata ve'yoideka Elokai memeka Keliata ve'yoideka Liata ve'yoideka Elokai memeka Liata ve'yoideka Elokai memeka Liata ve'yoideka Elokai memeka Keliata 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 ve'yoideka Elokai memeka Chaim.
Chaim. Let's make it formal. Welcome everybody to the Farbrengen for actually Tesvavel to Chayel. It's Farbrengen Mitam Bais Menachem of Miami Beach, but why shouldn't anybody who wants to join is welcome to join. And sometimes we even have a guest to continue Farbrengen, and tonight we're having Rabbi Shalom Lipskar, the Shul of Harbor, the Shliach in Bal Harbor. So he's going to join us and continue the Farbrengen. But let's first start. So we started with L'chaim as you're supposed to. Dr. Levine started with the Nigen. About the good. But I want to say that this is Farbrengen, and he said for Chayel. Mute. So Chayel is not till Monday. So tomorrow night is really Chayel. But now we have the Maila that we're in between. We're in between Tesvav Elul and Chayel. Tesvav Elul, which is the day that Temchet Mimim was established. It says in my name that the Rabbi Rashab was Miyaset Temchet Mimim on Tesvav Elul. And this is in Mamish in between. Tesvav Elul was Friday, and Chayel is tomorrow night, is Monday. So we're in between. So this is able to be Mechaber Tesvav Elul and Chayel. And the MS, there is a great connection, obviously. I mean, there's nothing, no chidushim between the Siyazdas of Temchet Mimim and Chayel. You know, Chayel, Rebbe quotes from the Frierdiker Rebbe, from Chassidim, from Amol. Chayel gives a chayas into the Aveda of Elul, but it means it brings a chassidish chayas. That's what it is. And the union of Temchet Mimim brought chayas into Chassidus, into Lubavitch. I feel that practically speaking, besides that, you have the Bochum that learn, but this we know that after the Stalkes of the Rebbe Marash, and for quite a few years, a long time, that the Rebbe Rashab's brother, the Razah, didn't want to accept the Nisiyas, and the Rebbe Rashab himself didn't want, even though he said Maimorim and he took Yechidus, but it wasn't still full-fledged. And the Frierdiker Rebbe writes that at that time, those years, it looked like, and it's hard to say such a Lashon, if the Rebbe wouldn't say it, we wouldn't be able to use a Lashon, but the Frierdiker Rebbe writes that Lashon, that it's gehalten almost by Churban Lubavitch. Without the Rebbe, and looked like things are not going to go. Then finally, when the Rebbe Rashab took over in the Siyas, this made a big shturim, and this made a big thing. But besides that, when he was Miyaset Temchet Mimim, that established it even more, that made the Chassidus, Lubavitch, which is Chassidus, made it very strong. Ad Kedikar, they say, I forgot which one it was, the Rashbatz or Michal Alter, one of the two, but they were speaking to each other years later after Lubavitch, the Temchet Mimim was established already in the Bochim, were Mamish, in the Hai Madrege. So he says to him, remember what we were worried about years before, what's going to be with Lubavitch? You see how it's pale? And he said, yeah, it's so good, so great, that it's much more than we expected. So the union of Temchet Mimim definitely is part of the union of Chayas. Chayel is the union of giving Chayas in Chassidus, in the Aveda of Elul, according to Derech Chassidus. So Temchet Mimim, the Siyazdas of Temchet Mimim brought the Chayas in Chassidus, the Chayas in Lubavitch. And Takya Ad Hayem Hazeh, it's Temchet Mimim, that's the Yisod that brings the Chayas into Lubavitch. So that's connected to the union of Chayel. But Chayel, we know, is the day that brings Chayas. Tesvav Elul in itself is a special day. Everyone knows what happened in the year Tovshin Mem Vov. I obviously wasn't there, but we all heard it then, and we all know that the Rebbe Tesvav Elul was like this year, Friday. The Rebbe went to the Eyal. The Rebbe came back from the Eyal Friday, like he would come always late, not far, not so pretty close to his man. He would come back. So the Seder was like this. By the Rebbe, when he used to go out to the Eyal, go to the car, people were standing there sometimes, and kids, the Rebbe would give tzedakah, and the Rebbe would say, but when he came back from the Eyal, he never looked at anybody and spoke when he would go out of the car and run mamish run, but go straight inside and go into his room and didn't stop to talk and didn't do anything. That time, when he came back from the Elul, it was Friday Farnach. He came back when he was going very fast, and there were a few bochrim standing outside. Very few. It was Friday Farnach. And Rebbe, as he walked by, that's what they said over then, made with his hands like this. They couldn't understand. They were standing at 3, 4 bochrim, 5, I don't know exactly the number. They were standing, and the Rebbe was running from the Elul, coming in, and he made with his hands. Because they didn't know what to do. What should they do? They didn't know what to expect. There's no singing. So Shabbos by Farbrengen, the Rebbe said, I came back from the Elul, and it's Tesva of Elul, and I expected a 770 Olgein Chodarom. Now, Chodarom, I don't know which language it is, if it's Yiddish or Russian, that means it should go on wheels. Tesva of Elul, the Siyasat of Tesva of Elul. So he said, I expected that it should go, if it was Zayin Chodarom. And he said, hey, Tochen, and it wasn't so they should Farbrengen. Now, the Rebbe wanted that it should be Chodarom to express the chayas that you have, because making a shturim, the Rebbe called Chodarom or Bechal by the Rebbe, the expression, Zayin with a shturim, everything was a storm. The Welt even knows that in Lubavitch, also the shturim. The Rebbe always used the word shturim, because shturim means chayas. And that has to do with chayelo, to do it with the chayas, to do it with the gishmak, with the chayas. And when you make a shturim, it's the chayas. It reminds me what I heard a long time ago, that once there was somebody who went to visit the Rebbetzin. It was close to the family, I don't know who it was. And the Rebbetzin told him that tomorrow there's going to be a Farbrengen. Was not expected time of Farbrengen. But she said, I'm telling you, there'll be a Farbrengen tomorrow. Oh, this will be a Farbrengen tomorrow. When he came back and he came to 770, he told him, I go, oh, there'll be no Farbrengen. I had no idea of Farbrengen. It was not a practice, no one said it, and it's not planned. There's no Farbrengen. He didn't understand what she meant. The Play Mamish, the Rebbe went to the Elul that day. And when he came back from the Elul, the Rebbe told Rabbi Chalikov, Rabbi Groner, to announce that soon there will be a Farbrengen. That was called a sudden Farbrengen. And there was a Farbrengen. Now, sometimes these sudden Farbrengens, Take, by the Rebbe himself, was sudden. In other words, he hadn't planned to do it. He once even said, Befeirish, Tov Shalom Aleph, Chamishosar B'Shvat, he said he was by the Elul, Tzach mir gestupt Farbrengen. And he said that he spoke about it, and then later he says, he took a hero that from now on, if it'll push me to Farbrengen, I'll Farbrengen, whatever. But it was sometimes sudden by the Rebbe himself. And I'm sure sometimes he planned. This one, since the Rebbe said, obviously it was planned. But the kasha is, if we planned to make a Farbrengen that day, so why didn't he say anything? So this person, this is how the story goes. I wasn't there, so I can't guarantee it's true, but this is the way I heard years ago. And he came back, next time this person went to the Rebbetzin, he told the Rebbetzin that obviously this was planned. You knew that there's going to be a Farbrengen tomorrow. So if the Rebbe planned to make the Farbrengen, why didn't he say it? Why didn't he let people know? If people would know, they would plan. It would be a... So she said, der Mann hat lieb, as sie wird a Sturm. My husband, the Rebbe, likes a Sturm. A Sturm means an excitement. That whenever anybody who remembers those times when you were 770 and there was a sudden Farbrengen, what would happen? Mamish, we would say, like saying Yiddish, bank. People were running to go home, running to the phone, running here, making the tables. Sitz get mit a Sturm. The Rebbe get Farbrengen. It's a whole Sturm. So she said that even though he planned to do it, but he wanted a Sturm. So when the Rebbe came back from the Elul that time, Tesva of Elul, and he said the next day that he expected to be Chodarom. He wanted to be, there should be Mtachayis, Mtashturim. So it's connected definitely to Chayel, even though it's a Shturim because of Timchet Mimim, but it's connected to Chayel because Chayel is the union of Chayes. The Chayes that we talk about, that Chassidus makes, is forbidden with Chayel. Actually, the Rebbe even, in the Geye Lag Baimer, which is also forbidden with Chassidus, the Rebbe also connects it to Chay. The famous Sikhe, where the Rebbe explains, like Baimer is Chay Ir, and the Rebbe Takik shows the comparison. That just like Chayel is a Chayes Naveda von Elul, Chay Ir, like Baimer is the 18th day of Ir, is a Chayes, gives a Chayes in the Aveda of Ir. And the Rebbe explains it there. So this is the union of a Chayes in the Yonim of Elul. This is, so when we're in between the days, between Tesva of Elul and Chayel, so we're able to be mechaber the two because they're both very important. Tesvav Elul, which is the Yesod by the Rebbe, this was something, by everybody, the Chamis Yasef, Stefot Mimim, which brought a Chayes in Chassidus, a Chayes in Lubavitch, and Chay Elul was brings the Aveda, a Chayes in the Aveda of Elul. So that's something special. So this Farbrengen is in honor of the connection between Tesvav Elul and Chay Elul, so we're doing it in between. Now, what is Chay Elul? We all know Chay Elul. Chay Elul is the Yemeledes from the Baal Shem Tov and the Yemeledes of the Alter Rebbe. You also know there's another thing, a Chay Elul, which is not really spoken about too often, but nevertheless, sometimes the Rebbe spoke about it, and that is Chay Elul is the yard site of the Maharal Miprog. And that also is be'etzem connected to Chay Elul being the union from Chassidus, from Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, because a lot of the things of Chassidus is based on the Torah of the Maharal Miprog. And the Rebbe said, and I'm going to say that when he said it, Bekesher to what? That he said that he heard Chassidim say that when the Alter Rebbe writes in the Sharblat of Tanya, that Tanya is Melukim mit Tisvorim mit Tisefrim, one of the things he meant is the Maharal Miprog. The Rebbe said, I didn't hear it from the Shver, but nevertheless, Chassidim say it, it's true. The Gabba, what did he say it? It's interesting. This was the Farbrengen of Chay Elul, Shabbos Chay Elul, 50 years ago, exactly 50 years ago. People heard the story, but I'm telling you, I remember from the time Tovshin Lamed, Shabbos Parsha Sovei, Chay Elul Tovshin Lamed. That's when the Rebbe spoke about this being the Yortzeit of Maharal Miprog. Because what happened was, this was the time of the hijacking, when the terrorists hijacked two planes and took him to Jordan. And they were there for a long time. And they couldn't get out, and all the diplomacy and everything, and they wouldn't let go. So then Shabbos, Parshas Kisovei, Chay Elul, the Rebbe spoke about it. And the Rebbe said that since the day is the yortzeit of the Maharal Miprog, and the Maharal Miprog has a Shaykhus to Chassidus, and he said mit Tisorim of Tisefrim, and he said that the Maharal Miprog had to do with Nisim, stories from the Maharal Miprog that he did things. He didn't mention the word Gelom, the Maharal Miprog, the Gelom, which that's a real mess. He didn't mention it, even though the Rebbe in a letter writes, somebody wrote to the Rebbe that he thinks that there was, some people say that the whole Maisa with the Gelom with the Maharal is a Bama Maisa. It never happened. So the Rebbe writes very sharp that it's only known by Yidden and it's true, etc., etc., and this he does. But the Rebbe doesn't mean, but he meant it's known to Nisim and with him Lochim. So the Rebbe said that because of that, since in this hijacking, there's somebody there was Kochzach in the Svorim from Maharal Miprog. That was Harav Hutner, and he Kochzach in the Svorim of the Maharal Miprog. Actually, his Kelo, I don't know, his yeshiva's Kelo was called Kelo Gurarye because that's the sefer of the Maharal Miprog. So the Rebbe said, and the Maharal Miprog Shaykhus Chassidus, and he says, as we see the Shaykhus, besides what he said from the Svorim of the sefer in Tanya, he said that if you look in what the Friedrich Rebbe wrote in biography, which means in the beginning of Hayom Yom, there's the biography of every one of the Rabbeim. And the way the Rebbe said it, that the Shver who wrote it is Meyaches, the Alter Rebbe, to the Maharal Miprog. It says Mamish Ben Achar Ben Achar Ben, all the way to the Maharal Miprog. Nothing further but the Maharal Miprog. So we see the connection. So the Rebbe said that since it's the Yortzeit of Maharal Miprog, and there is somebody here in this Sakona, whatever, I don't know what he used, that is Kochzach in the Svorim from Maharal Miprog, so there's all the Schus Beistein. And truth is, Mamish, a few days later, or a day later maybe even, they let him go free. No one understands why, but they let him go free. And I heard even more, right then, I heard from Rabbi Zev Katz, his cousin was one of the, I think in Tatum Seder, one of the top guys. His name, what's his name? I have to remind myself his name. Was an Eidim by Avram Ziskind. So he was Rabbi Hutner's Talmud. So it's his cousin. So this Shifman was the name. I think so. He called Rabbi Zev Katz 2 days later, and he says he got a call from Rabbi Chadakov. Rabbi Chadakov asked him, "Did you hear what happened by the Farbrengen Shabbos? And do you know what time it was that the Rebbe had said he had heard about it? What time it was?" And they made calculations. He told him that at that time, Be'erech, I don't know if Mamash to the minute or Be'erech, that time, that's when something started happening, the freedom of Harav Hutner. So the Rebbe, Rabbi Chadakov, obviously, when he called him, he's from the Rebbe, wanted him to know that this is connected. So this is the day also the Maram Miprog, which the Yortzah, the Maram Miprog, which also connected to the union of Chassidus. Now, what else is there in Chai Elul? Chai Elul was the beginning of the Limudim and Timchet Mimim. Again in Ayemim, that Tesva of Elul, that's when it was Nisyasid, and Chai Elul, that's when they started learning. I once heard from the Partizan, Abzush's Partizan, he said, what do you mean it was Nisyasid? They didn't start learning till Chai Elul. What did they do between Tesva of Elul and Chai Elul? They made the yeshiva and they didn't start learning. So what did they do? Das heißt, mit verbracht, etliche Tage nacheinander. They Farbrengen a few days in a row. Somebody else says a joke that said, what pshat b'chlalet? Which way is miyaseh if they didn't start learning? So someone said the kitchen opened. But he said different. He said, mit verbracht the ganze Zeit. Few days in a row mit verbracht. But whatever it is, this is a day that also has the shaykhs to Timchet Mimim, and it will start pushed off. The learning was for some reason, I don't know why it started on Chai Elul. We also know that the Shazav at Timchet Mimim then was in the week of Sheva Brachas of the Friki Rebbe's Chasana, which is again connected to the Sinyan, because Chai Elul, which is the end of the Chassidus, started the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, which is the beginning of Chassidus in the different stages. So it has to do with the Rabbeim. So the Friki Rebbe's Chasana was then. And that's when the Rebbe Rasha was Miyaseh Timchet Mimim, was middle of the Sheva Brachas. And the Rebbe once explained, because the whole Inyan is the Hemshech. He made Timchet Mimim not only for that they should have them. This should be the way the Hemshech of Chassidus should go on. But Mele, it's the Chasana of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Because the Chasana, the whole purpose of a Chasana is to bring the Hemshech. And it came out even more from what the Rebbe said. The Hemshech of the Chasana, which is the Hemshech of Deiris, is really the next generation. You get married in order to have a Hemshech that there should be children. So that's the third generation, the next generation. And the Rebbe basically hinted, or more than a hint, because the Sikh is actually Mugin, look at the Sikhs, they suffer. So the Rebbe said that Be'emes, when is the Tachlis of the Faran, that's the next generation. So what's Pshat? The generation of the Frierdiker Rebbe's children, which is the Rebbe's generation, the Deir HaShvi, that's the Tachlis. So the Frierdiker Rebbe's Chasana at that time has to do with the Hemshech of the next generation, which is the Rebbe. So it all goes together to one Inyan. And the other thing in Chai Elul is that it's 12 days before Rosh Hashanah, and that's when we have to make a Cheshbon HaNefesh of Yom L'Shana, a day for a year. And it's interesting that Chai Elul itself is a Cheshbon HaNefesh. Day for a year means for the last year, every day is to make a Cheshbon of what happened that month that's equivalent or parallel to this day. So Chai Elul itself is when we make a Cheshbon for the month of Tishrei last year, which is for Rosh Hashanah. So this is very special that this is, Rosh Hashanah is the Reish of the year, so the whole year depends on Rosh Hashanah. So the Rebbe once explained, so B'meila Chai Elul is really the Cheshbon HaNefesh, the day Chai Elul, the Cheshbon HaNefesh for the whole year. Because if it's a Cheshbon HaNefesh for last year, Rosh Tishrei, which is Reish Hashanah, the head, which contains the whole year. So that's the specialty of Rosh Hashanah. But the special of Chai Elul, but the bottom line is that this is the day that we have the Chayas in Elul, the Chayas in Aveda, the Chayas in Tshuva, the Chayas in Chassidus, the Chayas, which Chassidus is Chayas, this is the Inyan of Chayas. And to make a Cheshbon HaNefesh, how much Chayas do we have in the Yonim of Chassidus? It's Chay, and it's Chay, the Yoledes of Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, so it's a Chayas in Chassidus. So we have, and it's a Cheshbon HaNefesh, we have to make a Cheshbon HaNefesh. See, hob mit the Chayas, do we have the Chayas in the Yonim of Chassidus? What it means like this. You have to make a Cheshbon HaNefesh. I'm just saying what it says. I'm not saying by anything. I'm not telling anything to anybody. I'm just repeating what it says. That the Cheshbon has to be, to make a Cheshbon yourself with these words. In vos ligich. That's the whole word. Chaya, when you have a Chayas in what? You have a Chayas in vos melikt. If something that's part of you and you enjoy it and you're involved in it, that's where you have a Chayas. Something that you don't enjoy, something that it's not a ikir, you don't have a chayas in it. So when we have to make a cheshbon HaNefesh of the chayas that we have in the union of Chassidus, it means we have to make a cheshbon and nefesh in was liegt man. In other words, what's important to us? What's the important thing in our life? We're not like all the Chassidim, die gelegen in little Kus and the Mittel Rebbe's Chassidim, they used to meet, they used to talk, talking about at least in our level, which is a simple level, also in was liegt man, which is al derech the story that Rebbe once told. I think he told it more than once. Yeah, I think he told it twice. The story with the Rebbe Michal der Alter, Rebbe Shmuel Michal's training. That Michal der Alter, given from Mashpiyim, was a Mashpiyim in Lubavitch. He was known as the Mame from Temchet Mimim, and he was a very special. His Abbas Yisrael was great, and he was when he couldn't give a shir in Chassidus anymore, and he's older already. So the director from the yeshiva, the Gashmitic director, wanted to fire him. I know he can't do the job, and the Rebbe Rashab told him not to do it. Why? Because his tziyur being in yeshiva, just being in yeshiva is enough. He's worth the salary. I mean, we're just trying to describe who he was. And he helped, he was mamish, a person who used to help the bochrim and everything. That once they say he was in the middle of Krishma and he saw a bocher torn shoes, he stopped and he took him to make sure that he's going to buy shoes. So they asked him, middle of Shema Yisrael, you're thinking about the shoes? Yeah, he said to think about the bocher's shoes is avaya achod. Anyway, so anytime there was a bocher who had a problem with the priziv was meaning the draft, and they had to get out of it. So he was much involved. So once he had to go to Petersburg to help work there for about a bocher who was, they had to get him out of the army, or he shouldn't have to be drafted to the army. So he came to Petersburg, and there lived this chassid called Rabbi Shmuel Michal Treinin, also from the Chassidim, and he was a rich man, a person in town, and he was supposed to go with him to help him work again to see how to get the bocher out. So they were going on the major street of Petersburg, known as Nevsky Prospect. And the way the Rebbe described it, he was, must have been before davening, this Rebbe Michal der Alter. And B'meile, he just finished making his hachones to daven. So he wasn't buttoned the way you're supposed to be buttoned, statechna the right way. So as he walking, so Shmuel training in the Eidel and turned around to him and he said to him, here you're going in Petersburg. Yes, you got it buttoned up right. But the way I understood from the Rebbe said it, probably his zipper was open. Something like, he wasn't. So he says to him, so when he told Rebbe Michal der Alter, in the Eidel, because he knew Rebbe Michal der Alter could answer back, so he told him, but you have to take care of this. So he said to him these words. He said to him like this, Reb Shmuel Michal, he said, guckt in was liegt. Look where you're involved in. To him, being involved, you have to be statech, you have to be everything as a fit begashmi, as that wasn't liegt in them. So that's a madrege of those chassidim. But the nekuda is that when it comes to Chayel, we have to think to see in vos milikt. What are we mainly involved? And that's connected to Temchet Mimim. Because what the Rebbe Rashab said when he gave the Talmidim of Temchet Mimim, he said that's the whole idea, to train them, to be mechanech them, that they should be people was liegen in Ruchnius. What was the famous sikha that the Rebbe Rashab said? The sikha from Kola. Anybody who goes to Menachem Bais David, Kol Yetzel Menachem Bais David, get Christus Kesav Ishtei. And if you go to Menachem Bais David, you would write a get to their wife. So he says every Talmud Temchet Mimim is a soldier in the Menachem to fight the Menachem from Bais David. And get Christus Kesav Ishtei. He touched Ishtei means the goof. You have to make it get cut with your Gashmias. Now it doesn't mean cut Gashmias. You have to have Gashmias. But it was only shlicken at them. That should not be what Archaius is. That's what you have to think. In other words, in was liegt man, was geht man rein? What are we involved in? And I'm not saying it as a person who's trying to say things to others. I'm just saying what the opinion is. And that has to do with the parsha. The Rebbe says in the Sikha on Hoye Kisove Yala Oretz. So he said the word Kisove means to go in completely. The Yirishta Yeshafta, you go in and that's where you are in Ganzen, Ibrahim in Ganzen. The Gemara says, Bia b'miktsas, leishma bia. If you go in a little bit, that's not really you went in. It says like Abadina of a Metzera, that if a person goes into a room where there's a Metzera, you become Tamei. But if you only put in a little bit of you don't go in completely. You put it in your hand. You don't become Tamei. Why? Because it's like a mikvah also, because Bia b'miktsas, leishma bia. By mikvah also it says you have to go into the water. So you have to go completely. If one hair is out, it's no good. So Bia means going in means in Ganzen. So Hoye Kisove Yala Oretz means that you're going in Ganzen, that we have to go in Oretz. What's Oretz? Oretz is Lomash Nikra Shmo Oretz. Sherotzet Zalasset Tzenkena. The Rotzen to do what Davish wants. The Rotzen means it ran or it wanted to do Davish's Rotzen. So it means that you have to be Arangin in Ganzen. Now, what does it mean in our levels? Our levels doesn't mean that Ganzen Tag sitzen and the Ganzen Tag lernen Chassidus, and then that's not our level. However, it would be. But at least, what's more important? What's priority for us? The priority, which means that's the one. Good, because we're not at Tzad Tzadikim Gemurim. But the idea of Arangin in Arangin, and that's connected. That's Taich Kisove. It's like the Baal Shem Tov says, Pashas Neyach Boya La Teva. Arangin in the Vetter. We should go in. We should live in it. That should be our life. Another thing which negates to the Pashas Kisove, the Rebbe explains another Sikha, also the same word, that Bikurim represents the Yidden. Bikurim, it says by an apostle, that the Yidden are called Bikurim. Why? Bikurim is the first fruit, and the Yidden are the first of the creation. The whole creation was there because of the Yidden. So they're the beginning, the top of the creation. And what do you do with Bikurim? Bikurim has to be brought in the Beis Hamikdash lifnei Hashem Elokecha. So the Rebbe says that this teaches us that a Yid, which is represented in Bikurim, has to always feel that he is lifnei Hashem Elokecha, that he's in front of Hashem. In other words, he has to feel that is his whole Metzias. Metzias is the priority of his Metzias is lifnei Hashem Elokecha. That's what Chassidus B'chal teaches us. That's what Temchat Mimim is for. But that's what it's supposed to. That's what the remnants of Bikurim, and that's the thing that we have to think about when it comes to Chai Elul, when the supposed talks about the union of Chayes. So the Chayes means that this is in them Lichtman, and that's connected to being the Yemoledes of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe. Whatever I'm saying, it's all from different sichas. The Rebbe says in a different sicha that it's connected to the union of Yemoledes, the union of birth. What's the union of Yemoledes? Remember, the child is born. What happened? The child is born. Till the child is born, the child is also alive inside the mother. The only thing is, it's not his chayes. It's not his life. The Gemara says, he eats what his mother eats. And his whole chayes comes from his mother. It's not really his chayes, even though he's alive. In Ruchnis, it's a very high madrege while he's inside his mother. Gemara says, Neir Delek al Reshe, there's a candle over his head, which means a Ruchnis candle. The Malach teaches him Kol HaTorah Kula. But still, his chayes is not his own. His nefesh, his neshama is not his own. When he's born, then the neshama comes begilui. The neshama coming begilui, this is, when we talk about gilui ha-neshama, when Chassidus talks about gilui ha-neshama, this is what gilui ha-neshama means. Gilui ha-neshama means, every day there's a neshama. Your neshama is begilui, sheshine by you. What shines by you? What is your life that you feel begilui? Not be'etzem. Every yid be'etzem is a lukus, fine. But what's the gilui? That's the gilui ha-neshama. That's the herzach, what the neshama stands for, that stands as, that's our gilui. And that's the verbund with chayel, the chayes, that this is our metzias. That's the gilui ha-neshama. You know the famous story that the Rabbi Shalom once came. I told the story one of the Farbrengen. Leib once came to the Alter Rebbe, and he came along. I mentioned this. Came along with a chassid, one of his chassidim, and he was mentioning to the Alter Rebbe, he's introducing him, and he says to the Alter Rebbe, that, this chassid has Gilui Eliyahu. Eliyahu comes to him. Imagine Eliyahu Novi comes to you. You can imagine how great this is. He has Gilui Eliyahu. So Punkt then was standing on the other side of the shul, standing Rabbi Shalom Lipskar. He was davening Shemon Esrei, and he was holding by Sim Sholem. The Alter Rebbe says to the Baditchever, and this chassid, he's saying Sim Sholem, because that's what he was saying. Lachter von sein Gilui Eliyahu. He's laughing from his Gilui Eliyahu. So the Elter Chassidim from years before, what we remember, is the chazer over this Farbrengen of the Greinim, that when he told this story, he touched to his shot. He's laughing at this Gilui Eliyahu. What's wrong? What's there to laugh about? So he said that B'shas is davening had a Gilui HaNeshama, and Gilui HaNeshama is hecher from Gilui Eliyahu. Gilui HaNeshama is much higher. What's the pshat? In simple words, Gilui HaNeshama is what the neshama represents, which is the Eibush, the Elokus. That's by you, Begilui. That's what Chassidus is all about. And Chayel, that's the Chayes. But in simple words, in our level, we have to just make a cheshbon, because this is the beginning of the cheshbon nefesh of the last 12 days, especially of the month of Tishrei, which is the beginning of the whole year. Vu liegt der Chayes. That's what you have to think. Vu liegt der Chayes in our level, not in the level of Rabbi Shalom Lipskar, but in our level. Where is our priorities for ourselves, and where's the priorities which the children see? That's what the cheshbon nefesh that we have to make. It's connected, obviously, to Chassidus, as I'm saying. So, to realize, one of the practical things is to realize that Chassidus did not change. And that's something that a lot of people have to work on. Some people, there is, used to be Chassidus. It changed only in Siyur because we're different people and the times are different. The Nekuda is the same. The Nekuda of Chassidus is the same that it was from the beginning of the Baal Shem Tov. And then by the Alter Rebbe, Chassidus Chabad, it's all the same. Some people have this thought that, I'm more Chassidus, now it's different, we have to look different, we have to change, we have to make only in the technicalities of it, the Siyur of it. But the Nekuda has to remain. We always have to remember that it didn't change. Chassidus didn't change. This was one of the things that bothered the Rebbe so much. When one of the Rebbes in their Welt came out once and he wrote in the Sefer, Nishtachcho Teiras HaBaal Shem Tov. The Torah of the Baal Shem Tov was forgotten. It bothered the Rebbe ad mitzvah hanefesh. Was heißt es? Baal Shem Tov, Chassidus ist bis Mashiach weiter. Was ist vergessen geworden, forgotten the Teiras of Baal Shem Tov. It bothered the Rebbe. And they said that's why Tovshin Chof, it was 200 years from the Stalkers of the Baal Shem Tov, the Rebbe made such a shturim in the letters. Why? Because it's all to go against the Nekuda of somebody saying the Shtach Teres of Baal Shem Tov. Yutas Kislev, Tovshin Chof, where the Rebbe spoke about the letter of the Rebbe Rashav. He wrote Tofresh Samach Bais, but Negeya, the famous letter where he writes Rosh Hashanah the Chassidus, but Yutas Kislev the Rosh Hashanah the Chassidus. There he writes Negeya Chassidus Chabad, he Teres of Baal Shem Tov. But Chassidus Chabad is the Teres of Baal Shem Tov. It's there, and we have Chabad, and that's Teres of Baal Shem Tov. And the Rebbe explained by the Farbrengen. Why did the Rebbe Rashav write twice the word he? Because it says in Gemara, Negeya Kochim, Shina Olav HaKosov La'akiv. If it says twice, it means it is, no question about it. He, Teres of Baal Shem Tov. And the Rebbe bothered. Some people think now, even with the Negeya Shitas Chabad, that Nishtakach, it's not the same. I mentioned this many times, that I once heard from Rabbi Weinberg, and I'll say it again. He was once talking to me. Rabbi Weinberg said to me, this was after Gimel Tamach, 10 years after Gimel Tamach, 15 years, I don't know, I remember. So he says to me, I was talking to him, he says, we see how Chassidus is growing. Lubavitch, leaps and bounds. He says, this is Alts Benegeya, the Tnuas Lubavitch, the movement of Lubavitch. Was sein, was geht mit Chassidus Lubavitch? That's what you have to end. And it goes together. There's Tnuas Lubavitch, there's the movement, or let's use the words, there's the organization of Lubavitch. The organization of Lubavitch is Meire Meroimdig. But we have to remember, we from the inside know that this is all based on the Nekuda of Chassidus. There's a Sikha from the Friedrich Rebbe, and once the Rebbe said something similar. The Friedrich Rebbe says, there's a Sikha, he says that the whole union that were involved in being Mekarev Yidden and Marbitz Dain Frumkeit and Yiddishkeit, that really should be done by askonim, by people, activists who work and do this. This is their job. My inyan, he said, is chsidim uchsidis. Others are not doing that, so we have to do it. But it's all based as a result of the inyan of chsidim uchsidis. So we have to remember that this inyan of nishtakach, teras achsidis, chas v'sholom nishtakach, or nishtane teras achsidis, that's false. And that comes to Chayel. That's the time you have to remember. The Chayas has to be back. The Chayas has to be in Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, which is Chassidus, in the level that we're Shayach. Versteht sich, not jumping in high levels. The level the way we're Shayach. In the Aveda of Chassidus. And even though people say, the Rebbe was Muftzoi and the main thing, they ask once the Rebbe, how come the Rebbe doesn't talk about the Nyonim of davening? He says, I have to talk about it. That's all written already. I came extra things. But the truth is, even the Miftsoyim is also part of the Derech HaChassidus. Besides that, the Yisod of Chassidus is Avos Yisrael, Perek Lamed Beis of Tanya, the Melech is Avos Yisrael. But besides that, the Etzem Zach of doing Miftsoyim is an expression of Aveda. What's Chassidus? Aveda, you have to work for the Eibishter. You have to work yourself. So instead of working with the Eibishter in Davi, you work for the Eibishter and you break yourself. That's the whole idea. Iskafi, you break yourself to do something. I remember I mentioned this before. The Rebbe once said, Toshin Chavches, after he started Mitzvah Tefillin, when the 6-day war was, he started Mitzvah Tefillin. So for a whole year, I don't know, Mamish, a whole year, every big Farbrengen, he spoke about Mitzvah Tefillin more and more different than Yonim. So he said that if you go out in the street and you stop a Yid and you ask him, are you Jewish? And you put on Tefillin with him, if it's something that you feel good, comfortable doing, you did Mitzvah Tefillin, but that's still not the Tachel. The Tachel says if it's uncomfortable if you do it. And you do it. It's like it says in the Rebbe Rashab writes in the Maimon, the Samachs, that tzedakah, the mitzvah of tzedakah is about giving tzedakah to a poor man. But if it doesn't hurt you and it's not so hard for you to do it, that's not noch the uftu for mitzvah tzedakah. Mitzvah tzedakah is that you have to work on yourself. And the Rebbe said the exact same thing in the game mitzvah film. So the inyan of mitzvah film is Avedas Achsidus. You can't be mechalik and say, oh, this is the Rebbe. No, the Rebbe didn't talk about the old things of Chassidus. He talked about Karev. This being the Karev, besides the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael and bringing Mashiach and all Zachen, this is an expression of the Avedas of Chassidus. The Bemesh is the Yisod of Ganzidishkeit, like in Tanya, a Guf Yike, and Shom Yike, a Guf Tofel. So this is what Chayel is about. Chayel is a time of to sit down and make Cheshbon HaNefesh, that to see like we have always by Yutas Kislev. One of the things Yutas Kislev you always talk about is the Maisa from the Alter Rebbe while he was in jail, and the guy asked him why the Eibishter Ayeko, and the Alter Rebbe explained to him, the Eibishter asks every Yid Ayeko, who bist du? Where are you? So the shot is, this is something that wouldn't, the Maisa that's told over, it's a part of what Chassidus is. The Chassidus is to look into yourself, Ayeko, wo bist du? Wo halt ich? Not so much, was tu ich? Was tue ich? You have to know, what am I doing? I'm doing the right thing or not. But besides that, what's my priority? And this is what really Chai Elul is about. And connected to the Fatima, like I said, especially now, this year, which is 100 years from the Stalkas of the Rebbe Rashab. So certainly, Herzachon, the union of Temchet Mimim, what Temchet Mimim stellt for, and from then on, they were the forefront of Yiddishkeit, the forefront of Mesiras Nefesh. Was all connected to between, and it was all in the days of Chayel. That's why the Chayel, and that's when they started learning. Then there's just another thing I want to mention. The Negeya, interesting thing, Negeya Chayel, what comes to mind is that the famous 7 Torahs of the Baal Shem Tov, the Rebbe Rashab heard it in Gan Eden in the year Tofresh Nun Beis on Chayel. Tofresh Nun Beis, Shabbos, Parshas Kisove was Chayel, and the Rebbe Rashab saw what's going on in Gan Eden. And he repeated it over, and the Frierdiker Rebbe had it over also. And he said over what he saw in Gan Eden. And what did he see? What did he hear? He saw the getting together people in Chayel, and the Baal Shem Tov was speaking, and he told over a few Torahs in the Baal Shem Tov. Some are clear, some are not even so clear. So this all happened in Chayel. In other words, the idea that we see the Keich of the Rabbeim, that they're able to see what's going on in Shemayim, what's going on in Gan Eden, and the fact that they see what's going on in Eden, we understand. But even to be able to, not be able, but to want to repeat it, because Bechlal, by the Rabbeim, they didn't repeat things that are going on Lamaila. They didn't repeat. It says, Moshe Rabbeinu, when Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moshe, the Eibusha said, "B'chol beisi nemanhu." Moshe Rabbeinu, in my whole house, he's trustworthy. So the Shaila goes, what should he trustworthy in the Eibusha's house? What's he going to steal? What's he going to steal up there? So the Vart is, he doesn't tell over what he sees. And when the time when the Rabbeim did say over what they saw Lamaila, that's something very special, that they went out of their way. You know, who was the one that Tzemach Tzedek said that he's a child says over what you see in Cheder? Was not the Koiden of it, no, I don't remember it. Anyway, he used to say a lot of things that he saw Lamaila. So that Tzemach Tzedek said he says over things that he really shouldn't. So the Rebbe Rashab should be able to say over, but not be able to decide to say over what it says. And Frieger Rebbe told it over later. That shows that's also something special. Al Kaponim, the bottom line is, after everything, it's Chayel, almost Chayel, so we have to make the cheshbon for, start a cheshbon on Nefesh, and Kumitz of Verstand, where are we holding in the Inyonim of Chassidus? I've been learning Chassidus, I've been the dark Chassidus, but the Ikir is the mindset. That's what I really am talking about, is the mindset. The Vos Milik. The mindset, Vos Trachtman, what's the priority? And Baruch Hashem, there are hundreds, thousands and thousands of Chassidim like that. But we still have to make a cheshbon, each one in his own cheshbon. Is he like that or not? And if you see that you are, you have to be Meisif. And if you see that Chas v'Sholom someone is not, has to change it. That's the best achana for Rosh Hashanah. Because this is all the feeling of Chassidus, which is Ein Mulvadi, that's what it is. And Rosh Hashanah is the time when we Kabbalah say Malchus Shemayim. This is the best achana for Rosh Hashanah. And that's why Chayel, the letters of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe came Takev before, right, Mamish close to Rosh Hashanah, because this is the achana to Rosh Hashanah. Just when the gay stam, we're talking about Chayel, just to mention, everyone knows this, but just to negate the birth of the Alter Rebbe, we know that when the Baal Shem Tov, on his day of his birthday, the Baal Shem Tov used to make a big Farbrengen. On Chayel, every year Chayel is make a Farbrengen. In the year Chayel, Tov Kuf Hei, when the Alter Rebbe was born, he was very, very freilach, the Baal Shem Tov, very ufgelegt. And the Talmidim didn't know why. What's so special? He even davening for Omid with a special nigun. So he told him later that today, the Neshama Chadosh is coming down to this world. And he said, B'chlal the Seder, what goes on Lamaila, when a Neshama is supposed to come down, I'm familiar with it. But the Seder of how Neshama Chadosh comes down, that I never saw. And this is why he was so freilach. The Baal Shem Tov said, didn't say who it was. So there's the Baal Shem Tov's Yemeledes, the Alter Rebbe's Yemeledes. It's a sikha where the Rebbe explains that the Frierdiker Rebbe said, based on the meaning of the Baal Shem Tov from Achia Shaleni, that you have to say the capital of your age. So what happened to Chayel when the Alter Rebbe was born? The Baal Shem Tov started saying the capital Memches. It was 40, became 47 that day. He started Memches. And the Rebbe explained the whole kesher between capital Memches and the Alter Rebbe. So it's all begeid how it affects, how it relates to Chassidus Chabad, what the Alter Rebbe took it on. Anyway, L'chaim, the Eibusher will help him, that we should take it to heart. I mean, I should take it to heart. I mean, everybody also. But I'm saying, if I say it to somebody else, I really mean it. To myself, I don't. So maybe it could be because I really mean somebody else. Do the stone because somebody else should do. Anyway, so we should bring it down in ice of a pail and straighten and design more chassidim and makashorim to the Rebbe and do what the Rebbe wants. And that'll be the greatest achana to Rosh Hashanah. L'chaim, l'chaim. I think we should try again to sing a nigun, and then we'll hear from Rabbi Lipskar. I believe he's on. I don't know. Yeah, I see he's on. So we'll hear from him. No, Dr. Levine, you sang before, start again, and we'll be able to, you have to unmute.
Which niggin?
Which nigun? Kedai is the Alter Rebbe's nigun, Adu Hashem Tov. Tzomol Chanafshi, that's also the Alter Rebbe's nigun.
Sama lecha nafshi, kama lecha, yeah. Sorry.
The Eretz
Yahweh bli mayim.
Maybe we'll try one more nigun, and then we'll go to Rabbi Litzker. Yes, Hashem. One more with the Alter Rebbe's nigunim. Avinu Malkeinu.
תסתכלי בבקשה כולם. יצא צ'אט של בן שלום, אז זהו, נגמר הקצת.
Sing this, puts you in the mood of remembering when you sang it by the Rebbe, and you would stand aside by the Farbrengen was, especially on Rosh Hashanah, in Kippur, you would watch the Rebbe. It was especially with Kippur before, at the end of Nila, before Napoleon's march, and they would sing it sometimes. The Rebbe would sing it for, I remember a few times, years I remember, he told us to sing 10 times. And it was Chiyas a lot, but this brings you back into the mood of Tishrei by the Rebbe. Anyway, now we're going to go, I guess Rabbi Lipskar is on. I don't see from the screen, I can't see, but.
Yeah,
Here,
I'm on here, but you still have a few minutes on your schedule.
No,
I don't want to take away Chas v'Shalom.
No, there's no
schedule is 10,
no schedule.
10. They told me 10:30.
Oh, that's someone made that up.
All right, and it was I figured that Farbrengen has to be at Mercedes Masuda. In any case, Chaim, everybody. Chaim.
Again.
So it's Farbrengen for Elul, which obviously from many perspectives is the center point of who we are and what we are. Baal Shem Tov and Alter Rebbe. The transformation of the entire world happened through these Meidas Agdalim, the two big, enormous luminaries that came into our world in an exceptional way. So the practicality is, we can talk and, we're just very, very inspired for the last hour, hearing various aspects of the Chayas and Elul, etc. The mindset that we have to be Chassidim, to learn Chassidus, and the connection between Tenchet Mimim, Tuba El and Chayel, and of course, all of that resonates to most of us as Chassidim, Shluchim, Chassidim, Balabatim, but people who recognize the extraordinary impact of Chassidus and the necessity of Chassidus, particularly in our generation. As the Rebbe said in a number of occasions, that the Eibishter gives us that which we need at the particular time we need it. So during this period of time, why was Chassidus, so to speak, revealed in this period of time, in our time, this extraordinary period of Cheshach, Kaful, and Chupel, a real darkness. And as time goes on, the darkness becomes more evident. So you kind of think at some point that we're already in such a dark space, it can't get any darker than that. So you come to a point where, unfortunately, the world is shaking and trembling in a very serious way. As we all know, that the world, so to speak, is in a very precarious position on every level. And as you've heard so many times, probably in the last few months, that this is one of the only times, one or two, three, four times in history, where the entire world stopped. The whole world is paralyzed, so to speak. And you get a reset button. And within this paralysis, where you realize, doctors realize, scientists realize that there are many things that are beyond our capacity, beyond our grasp. Happens to be, from a personal point of view, can just tell you very practically. Unfortunately, fortunately, I came through it, but unfortunately, I was the first patient in the University of Miami Hospital with COVID in the middle of March 19, right after Purim. And when I was there, and the doctors came to see me all dressed up in their big day Kaddish, you couldn't recognize who they are, like spacesuits. And the one thing that bothered me the most, that troubled me the most, was the fact that when they were talking to each other, they themselves didn't know what to do. Should we try this? Should we try that? And I said to them clearly, I said, it's very interesting to note that there comes a point in scientific reality where you realize that it's not up to us, it's up to a higher level. And you realize that, and you see it in a very real way. And yet, it is in this time when the world is undergoing such a treacherous period, such a, you might say, a journey that's really filled with the torrents of the, so to speak, the Mayim Rabim, the multitudinous stormy white waves that overwhelm the world, that under these circumstances, we continue to see darkness fall upon us in an unprecedented fashion. So the practicality is that we have to see what is Chayil, what Chassidus means to me and you in a practical way, in such a way that it also affects our environment. Of course, as Rabbi Shapiro said earlier, Chassidus doesn't change. The Baal Shem Tov's Teidos don't change. The Chassidus Chabad never changes. Circumstances, technology, application. Today you use Zooms. In the time of the Alter Rebbe, there was no Zooms. They had to come to the Alter Rebbe. That's what he writes in Tanya. People had to come to visit. But in today's circumstances, it's a different world. So, but it doesn't change. At the same time, you realize that humanity, in a very important way, does change. You talk to young people today, and they have a whole different perspective. On a simplest level, in terms of manners, decency, behavior. There's two different perspectives in educating a child, two different ways in approach. And there's been studies done on it. If a parent punishes a child, for example, disciplines a child, and the child cries, he doesn't want to get hit, the father hits him or punishes him, or so it takes away some of his privileges, and the child's screaming and yelling, and it hurts him. And sometimes a child can express himself in a negative way. I don't like you, daddy, and I don't like you, mommy, and so forth. And sometimes even say words. That's one kind of reaction. Another reaction is when the child doesn't cry, doesn't scream, doesn't yell, he just says, I don't care. He becomes desensitized. Today, we live in a generation where I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'll do what I want. That's the world around it is. So how do you practicalize Chassidus today in our own lives? Chayis in Elul is a chayis in the whole year, the Rebbe said. A chayis in Elul, in Klaus Union of Elul, and the two versions that the Frierdiker Rebbe said, and the Rebbe repeated many times, that the two versions is that Chayil get the chayis in Elul. That's one version, which means Elul and all the elements that Elul contains within it, that are articulated. Then Teda, and Tefillah, and Staka, and Tshuva. In some cases, also the union of Geula, the Psukim, the various acronyms that all of these 4, 5 elements represent. And the second version is that Chayil gives a chayis in the Veda for Adil Deidi V'Deidi Li. So the Rebbe said if you have these two perspectives, so if Farbrengen and Tafshin Lamed, I think Rabbi Shapiro can tell us for certain that when he says these two versions, they both mean something. They're both practical. It has to be. So what does it mean? Chayis and Elul, and a Chayis and Aveda from Yul Daid V'Daid Dili. When you say it's a Chayis and Elul, it also includes a Daid V'Daid Dili. And you say a Chayis and a Daid V'Daid Dili, how about the other aspects of Elul? What does that mean? So how do you reconcile these two factors? What does it mean? And to say it even in more, you might say, earthly terms, in the way that we can understand it in our lives. You say a Chayis and El, so in the morning you'll sit there, you get it in the morning, you'll hear Shefe, this week you'll be more careful with a minion, maybe more careful with Chitas, more careful with the Rambam, with all these factors, because as we know, the 12 days of Elul, the 12 days from Chayil to Rosh Hashanah is the 12 months of the year, and each day represents a month. So we're going to be a little bit more careful. Chayis and Elul, as you heard earlier, is a life force, a transformation, a cultural change in your existence, a culture change in your being. Your life means something else. That's a total consciousness, a daily, constant consciousness of where you are and who you are and what we're about and what our mission is. So how do you integrate that? How do you make it practical? And how do you make it practical in such a way that's not practical at a Farbrengen? Tonight we're sitting by the Farbrengen, Chassidish Yidden, we're saying l'chaim with each other, and we're, so to speak, commemorating Tuvel and Chayil. We're commemorating these important dates, which is very important. It's critical, and you have to bring it. You have to bring it to bearing. And not only that, but you started reminding yourself of the Rebbe's Farbrengens and how the Rebbe used to sing the Nigunim, and what the Rebbe said, etc. And it gives you a little bit of a, so to speak, an elevation. It gives you a little bit of an inspiration, and you feel something sometimes. And Farbrengen, particularly, you can feel something. You stood together, that even though we're looking at each other virtually, but somehow Zoom has taken on a life of its own. And virtual reality can also be reality, as we know. And you see each other, and you say l'chaim with each other, and you feel the other person is next to you and with you, so to speak. But how do you make that real? How do you make that into something that makes a difference in my life? In my life, Farbrengen, as you said earlier, you speak loud publicly because they ask you to say something. You say something. That's our obligation. The obligation is that when you're told to do whatever you have to do, which means it doesn't matter. You like it or don't like it. You say it, but you think to yourself, so what's the shot? So the Rebbe says, if you know Aleph, you teach Aleph. You know Aleph Bais, you teach Aleph Bais. What if you know Aleph and Aleph Bais and you want to teach somebody about Chassidus? So what does that mean? The Rebbe said many times that you don't have to teach where you're holding. You're teaching where you should be holding. So you're actually talking to yourself, and you're talking loud enough so other people can hear it. So actually, when you're bringing tonight and any night, you try basically in the manner that you can, in the best way, without, of course, divulging your own private life publicly. You're talking to yourself. So how do you make it real? How do you make it something that occupies you on a practical level, on a real basis, on a daily basis in your own life, and how you daven, and how you learn, and how you behave during the day, and how you act to a fellow Jew, and how you interact with your society, with your environment, and so forth, and how you fulfill your shlichus, and all of that. It's not something that you make up your mind that if I'm bringing, you make a good resolution, I'm going to do this, and so forth. You make up your mind for bringing that I'm going to change my thinking pattern. I'm going to change my consciousness, my awareness. It has to be a complete transformative process. So how do you do that? And that's what Chassidus demands. Whether it demands it from a perspective, also from the Frierdiker Rebbe said that the objective of Chassidus is also two versions. And what he said, either Lashana Teva Midaisav, to change the nature of your midas, or change your natural midas. Now, nature and nurture, because Hegel Nasa Teva, so we know today. So that's the objective. It's not easy. It's a tough job. It's not an easy process. It's an internalized change. But when you consider the Farbrengen, in particular Chayil, in particular now, as we're finishing off the year Tafshin Pei, and come Pei Aleph already, and it's already a long time, and we're overdue, so to speak, for Gila Mashiach, overdue on every level, the Gashmis, the Beduchmis, in society, in world, and politics. We're overdue. It's real. You think to yourself, it's enough already. So what happens? How do you transform that? How do you internalize that? How do you make it happen? So of course, that was the objective of Chassidus. So the Rebbe said, how do you interpret the concept of Elul? Chai El is the highest, and Elul generally. Chai El is the highest. So the Rebbe said that's basically the nafkamina between the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. Say, we're Chassidic Chabad, we have the Alter Rebbe, we have Chabad. So what did Chabad add to the process? Besides the fact, and again, Baruch Hashem, we had an hour of a lot of information, so I can build on it. So you just heard the people talking about the fact that Nua's Chabad, that's remarkable. There's more shluchim today than ever before in history. There's not a space in the world that there's no Chabad. Chabad is now mainstream, no question about it. Even people who are so far away from Yiddishkeit that they don't even go to the Reform synagogue, but they're like, Frolov says to me, all my friends, they like Chabad. He says, but let me ask you a question. Do you also believe that the Rebbe is like God or something like that? Because, they were told the Baba Mises, not Baba Mises, they were told real Mises, but the Baba Shevet way. So they don't understand. They have no concept of what means Eibishter, what means a human, and so forth. I said to them, it's not the Rebbe. You're also a piece of the Eibishter. Me, they don't understand it. But today, Chabad is all over the world. There's no place that Chabad is not. Again, with the jokes, with Coca-Cola, with the moon, etc., whatever you want to say. I know Balabatim that I know, people that are mamish, Litvish Yidden, serious Litvish Yidden, biggest supporters of the Litvish environments. They now say that wherever you go, it's Chabad. I went into one of their houses. I happened to be somewhere. I went into a house of a son of a person who is mamish, one of the number one supporters of all of Misnagdim in the world, of Mid and Lakewood, etc. And even the heads of the programs of these yeshivas were there too. You go into the person's house, and in the living room, you walk to the living room in front, on the wall was a major picture of the Rebbe. You think to yourself, how does that come? So from one perspective, you recognize that Chabad is all over the world, but there's an aspect of Chabad that's an internalized process. It's not just addressing an issue. It's addressing your whole internal structure, who we are and what we're about and what our souls and minds and hearts and behavior integrate. It's a complete different approach. So that's Chassidus Chabad. Chassidus, what did the Baal Shem Tov do? The Baal Shem Tov brought Chassidus generally. And the Rebbe said that the Baal Shem Tov, he brought all this Chassidus generally to the whole world. And there were Yereim, Shleimim, the Talmidim from the Talmidim of Baal Shem Tov were high-level holy people, no question about it. On the highest levels, Talmidim Baal Shem Tov, and he had thousands and thousands of followers. Came along, the Eibishter, and he brought on the Shama Chadasha, a brand new soul, because you have to bring a brand new concept into the world. What do you mean brand new concept? The Baal Shem Tov already brought Chassidus. Why is Chassidus Chabad considered to be a brand new concept? So that gives a whole hesed. Just like Tedesh B'Ksav and Tedesh B'Alpeh, Kol Maseh Talmid Vasek Aseh L'Chadash, listen to Moshe Sinai, which means, what does it mean that a person says something new? The whole Torah was given by Moshe Rabbeinu. There's nothing that wasn't given by Moshe Rabbeinu. So what do you mean he made a Chidush? So you say that they made a Chidush because he took out the potential from the potential. He took the practicality out of the potential. He took the klolim and he found the prat in it. And the prat that even Moshe Rabbeinu himself, so to speak, didn't know, like the Gemara says with Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Kiva, that he didn't know all the diyukim that Rabbi Kiva said that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know them. So what if Shani didn't know them? He didn't practically know them, but in essence, it already came down from Sinai because there was nothing new, including the Torah Chadash Mitatesha, the Rebbe said, also came down Moshe Sinai. Nothing really that didn't come down, and now a new revelation comes down, which means there's a new Matan Torah. There's a new Chiddush. That doesn't happen. It's already part of the whole process. What does it mean that there's a Chiddush? What does it mean that the Alter was Machadish? And it's Neshama Chadasha. It's not just Machadish. He had to be a brand new soul that came into this world the first time in order to bring this powerful process. What was the powerful process of Chassidus? So what did Chabad do? Chabad was Chabad. Internalize. That the Chassidus of the Baal Shem Tov was a general Chassidus. Tzaddik b'Manasseh Yichya. But you have to really serve the Eibishter. The Rebbe then brought two Lishenis that the Frierdiker Rebbe sort of, these are compartmentalized. These two concepts, he says, the Baal Shem Tov told us that one has to serve the Eibishter. I'm a darfdin in the Eibishter. And the Alter Rebbe came, we can do the Eibishter, how you can do it. One says that you need to do it, one says how you can do it. What does it mean? Wasn't it you need to do it when you can't do it? You need to do it means that you realize that you're the Eibishter is a shliach, that the Eibishter put you into this world, and you have a emunah, and that emunah impacts every part of your life. And every single thing you do is part of that emunah. That's why by Pelish Chassidus, there's a big thing. You know, I happened to be at a chasana in Eretz Yisrael, and this chasana was the Gerer Rebbe, and he came out with his chassidim, you know, in the middle of the chasana, so they made a table for him, and he sat down, and the whole Olam was a massive Olam. This chasana was an important chasana. The Gerer Rebbe himself came. There was maybe thousands of people. The room was only men. The men were in one hall, the women were in another hall. That's how they did there. So he sat down, and in front of him was a beautiful, they brought out a beautiful, like a sponge cake, a big cake. And next to it was like a silver bottle of I think it was wine. And then they had about 10 little cases there. And he sat down there, and everybody was crowding around. He didn't say one single word, nothing. He said nothing. They sang a few songs. The Mechutanim were sitting there, the Chassan was sitting there. All of a sudden, they gave the Rebbe the knife. He took a big, beautiful silver knife. He cut the chais. I was there right in the front. I saw the whole thing. I was surprised. I never saw such a thing. He cut the cake, one cake, and he started giving it to this person, that person, and so forth. The Mechutanim, the Chassan, and so on. There were a few people around. Cut the cake. Then he took the bottle and poured a little mashkin and gave to each a little cup, and they each took a mashkin, a little chayim. And then they did another song, and he got up and he walked out. That did not say one word. That was the. And the chayas and the Leibnikite, who did you see? They were telling me, I see, you know, to me, I mean, seeing the Rebbe, you see this. Of course, you know, these are tzaddikim, so I'm not going to say anything. Chas v'shalom. I mean, they're big tzaddikim, and they have a big following. But it was a different world. It's a different perspective. The Rebbe, I mean, at the end of the king, if he took the mezenis and gave a piece of mezenis, somebody, it was a big thing, and everybody grabbed a piece of mezenis. But what was the Rebbe's Farbrengen? The Rebbe's Farbrengen was his farsaminei, that a person had to understand what's going on in his life. Chassidus Chabad indicates a system of how to serve the Eibishter. What's the difference between that you have to serve the Eibishter and how to serve the Eibishter? Because you have to serve the Eibishter, the davening and taking the cake was the exact same thing. Sitting there and having a piece of cake with the Rebbe. Why? The tzaddik gave him the Messiah. That's it. There was nothing else. There didn't have to be anything else. Every single thing of their life choned by them is like davening. You daven, the Kavanah, they choned with the same Kavanah. By Chassidus Yid, daven till almost mincha time. Kavanah's home, chaps makes kiddush so they can eat quickly, as you know, especially in times of Farbrengen. Who went home to eat? Half the time people didn't even get a chance to go. You made kiddush over the kichel and the wine that was there, and that was it. There was no other factor. Right? I'm not saying it's not shaykh such a thing. it's a whole different perspective. So the Baal Shem Tov showed that you have to, how that he said that Medarf did the Eibishter. He showed how that the person has to serve the Hashem. You have to have the Amun and the Eibishter. Your whole life is the Eibishter. And therefore everything you do is the Eibishter. And it's right. The Alter Rebbe showed we can give the Eibishter. So we can't Eibishter, that's the difference between the Chayes and Elul. In the general Chayes of Elul and the Chayes and Elul, which means what's the name? The Vedas that feel. The Rebbe spoke many times about the Vedas that feel. Now again, you heard earlier. You're not. It's not. Even though I'm talking to myself also, but we're not talking where we're holding. We're talking where the reality is. The Rebbe spoke many times about davening, pushing, and in the last years. The early years, the Rebbe never didn't come down to daven every day with the Menachem Shachas. Last year, he started coming down daven with Menachem Shachas every single day. Shachas Menachem with me. And when people started, then how many times did the Rebbe said instead of looking at him, they should look in the Siddur? What does it mean? And the Rebbe wanted you have to daven question. What's pshat daven? What does it mean daven? Daven doesn't mean you got to say the words. I know. I'm part of. We have Baruch Hashem, we have Minyan in our shul and so forth. Sometimes they come to shul, a guy comes up to the daven for the Amud. Beautiful guys, tremendous guys. And Baruch Hashem, they come to shul. Baruch Hashem, they daven. I'm not making anything, but it's impossible. It's impossible. I mean, I know how to read Ivrit pretty fast. I mean, I've been reading it for a lot of years. I read it fast. And they daven. I can't keep up with them. It's impossible. Forget about Peter Shamilis. You can't keep up the words. Before you finish, you're already next to line. What does that mean? Because you're davening. This is like Sari B'Manosi Yisri. You're not a daven. You're not davening because you want to be connected to the Eibishter. So that's a whole nikud of what Chabad is. Chabad is not only about standing in the corner and putting on food. That's important. And it's critical. You have to say Jewish lives. But at the same time, Chabad is also about where we are holding ourselves in our own life and how we behave in our own life. And it's a very critical matter. Alter Rebbe showed wie me can dienen im Eibishten Poshet to learn Chassidus a libet nafshe. And it's critical to know that a libet nafshe. Recently, we were talking with a few shluchim about how to learn Tanya with college students. How do you learn Tanya with college students? So when you take a look and you open the Tanya, and Tanya is the foundation of the whole system, you have to learn it in such a way that it practicalizes something that has meaningfulness in your own life. What does it mean to me? You finish learning the Tanya for the day, the Chitas of the day. You finish learning the Chitas of the day. So today, Tanya, you have learned Chitas, Chumash, Tanya. So just like you say Tillim, you say Tanya, you say Chumash. You understand a little bit better. Tillim, you just say the words. Chumash, you understand a little bit better. Tanya, you also understand exactly. You're saying what you're saying, but there's no real essence in terms of connecting with the Eibishter on the highest level. Doesn't happen. So you have to ask yourself the question, how do you get it done? How do you make it happen? What do you do? How do you make it happen so that it's real? So that it's not just a story. It's not just something that's outside of the world. So let's go to another practicality. You heard before about Rabbi Rashab, that he shared Shabbos Bashkesave, Bais, he saw what's going on in the Elam Haba, what's going on in the neighbor. And that word that Rabbi Rashab heard from the Baal Shem Tov, and the Frierdiker Rebbe told over, became part of the Hayom Yom for Chayil and the Rebbe's Hayom Yom. So what does it say here? Let's just go for a minute because it's practical. I'm not going to get into the whole Hasidic thought process behind it. So let's talk about practice. Now we're talking. Farbrengen has to be practical. So commented on it. So the Rebbe said, "What's it? It's two shots. It's Menachem Ratzon, Menachem Merutz. The Eibishter's Ratzon. When you come to fulfill, you want to fulfill the Eibishter's Ratzon. And you want to be
willed by the Eibishter. You want that the Eibishter should love you and to build you and that you fulfill his will. So two things, Rotzen and Berutzer. So what happens when you go into the Bais? So you should know that this fact that you have this desire, this will, is something that the Eibishter gives you. Why does a person have that feeling? It's a gift. We have, it's either a gift or Yerusha. That's what the Rebbe says there. And then you should take from the first fruit of your land, the Samta Batana. What does it mean? Fruit is called Eides. There should be Eides, but can't be Siashvus. In other words, Samta Batana. And it has to be in a manner that is practicalized in your own life. It's not just Eides, that you get inspired and that it's a good moment and you have a nice Farbrengen. But Eides B'Kelim, there has to be B'Siashvus. It has to be in your practicality, which means that whatever we're talking about here now, to have that relationship with Eibishter, you have to make it practical in your own life. And what is that? And you go to the place that Eibishter, you go to the Eibishter, which means every place that a Jew goes, he has to know that he is on a mission to the Eibishter. That's the word that is Nayin Yain, and the word that the Rabbi Rashab heard from the Baal Shem Tov that the Rebbe explained. So the Rebbe explains, this Farbrengen happens to be that I was there in Tafshmem Aleph. So the Rebbe explained that Farbrengen was a Thursday night. That the Rebbe said that, what does it mean? Rotzen. So he says, what it says, Likud Torah. Rotzen is three things. Rotzen of the Eibishter manifests itself in three. The will of the Eibishter manifests itself in three things. What are the three things? Eilam, Shon, and Nefesh. Manifests Eilam is Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is called Eretz Chayfetz, the land of Hashem's will, because Ratzah Lasses Tzen Kaina. It's a land that is holy, and you learn in Tanya today the extraordinary aspect of Eretz Yisrael, that Eretz Yisrael is impacted like the rest of the world at the highest levels through Eretz Yisrael and so forth. The Rebbe didn't go into arichas about that, even though at that Farbrengen, the Rebbe did speak by arichas about the fact that we shouldn't give back a single inch of Eretz Yisrael. There's a whole discussion there, but it's a very interesting Farbrengen. You might want to look into it. Farbrengen, it's in the Sichos Kodesh. There you see it a little bit more in a expanded level. Where the Rebbe speaks about giving back the oil to Egypt, the stupidity of that and the foolishness of that. And then the Yom Kippur War, and why not go to the end and get the job done, and so that you can stop in the middle and so forth. And then in 1981, again, the whole issue with the Camp David Accords, et cetera, with the Rebbe said it's the biggest mistake you can make. So he spoke about it about Ichas, but that's one level of Eretz. Then there's the Eretz of Torah, which is Torah Sheba'al Peh. This is why, because the Rosh Hashanah Eibishter, it expressed itself Tafkir through Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is the fact that you don't know exactly what the toughest, you use a mashal, but the toughest, you don't know about tefillin except through Torah Sheba'al Peh. So actually, the Rosh Hashanah Eibishter expressed itself in this Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's Eilam. And in Shana is Rosh Hashanah. So it's Eilam, and Shana, and Nefesh. It's Torah Sheba'al Peh and Rosh Hashanah is the Rosh Hashanah Eibishter, because what happens on that day? That day, the Sabbath is each person has the capacity to be able to affect his life in a practical way. The Rebbe said at that time, we talked about Ichus. What does it mean that a person has the opportunity to affect his life in a practical way in Rosh Hashanah? because he knows that that's the birth, the time that the Abishter created man. And the reason he created man is because the Abishter wanted to fulfill his will. And in fact, man was created in such a way that he even has a primordial relationship with the world. He came before the world because so the Neshama of Yid already was there before even Bris Eilamus. And the whole purpose of Bris Eilamus is Bishvil HaTorah, Bishvil Yisrael. So we are there to fulfill the Ratzon of the Eibishter. So we are the Ratzon of the Eibishter. Not only the Ratzon of the Eibishter, but once the Eibishter put us into this world, and we fulfill his will in the practical way that he puts us into the garden, into this world. And this world, the whole world is there to serve us in a practical way. That's why they put us there. And even this Nachash was there in order, Shamash Gadol is to serve him in the proper way if he would have continued to fulfill the process, which didn't happen, but that was the objective. So not only do we fulfill the Ratzon of the Eibishter, we fulfill the tithe of the Eibishter. The Sabbath Baruch is very difficult. And the Sabbath Baruch is to affect the entire world. That's the objective of a Jew in this world. Kol ha'olam kulei. Ha'olam kulei, not kol ha'olam kulei. But we have to affect Timlich b'chvei Torah, that we want the Eibush to be the king on the entire world, which means in the entire world, in the lowest level of the world, we need him to be the king. We need him to be the king. Not only in the high levels of the world, we need him to be the king in the lowest levels of the world. And there are levels of the world that you might say there's nothing left over there except darkness. There's many stories about the Alter Rebbe that he occupied himself with Peter Shvui. And he went to people to get money for Peter Shvui. Peter Shvui was a big thing by the Alter Rebbe, but it's about Tzedek. But the Anusim, he was very much involved with people that were at the edge of their spiritual lives, so to speak. And there he tried to reawaken them and so forth. Sometimes you see that in the loneliest places, in the place that there's nothing there, absolutely nothing, the only thing that exists under those circumstances is a relation with the Eibishter. And I'll tell you just a practical story that happened to me. There was a guy, we work in the prison system. So there was a fellow in prison a number of years ago. That this fellow, he was sentenced for a long time in prison. I had a relationship with him. I used to see him almost on a weekly basis in the early years. This we talked about in the Tufshin Mems, when he first started the Aleph Institute. Went to the prison on a regular basis. We visited this guy for many years. And he became pushing the Hashem Torah mitzvahs to the extent that he could. He started putting on tefillin. They let him put on tefillin. He started keeping kosher. He started keeping Shabbos. He started living like a Yid to the extent that he could under those circumstances with the limited knowledge that he had. He started learning a little bit as much as he could. Whatever sefer I could bring him in, he would read it from beginning to end. Over a number of years, he went through the whole Chumash, the whole Tanakh, and he went through a good portion of the Tanya, etc., and a lot of Sikhs of the Rebbe. Anyways, he became that kind of a person. So one day, this person, he didn't have anybody to visit him. He was alone, but a very intelligent man, highly intelligent person. He was a businessman that made some mistakes in life, and he ended up to serve a long time in prison. Anyways, he became very sick, this person. Became very sick to such a degree that they had to send him to the hospital, send him here to Jackson Memorial Hospital. So Jackson Memorial Hospital, they have a ward over there where they have locked up with people in the prison who come from prison, make sure they don't escape. So this person who was extremely sick, he could almost never get out of bed. He had Yanamachla, and they already gave up on him. Couldn't. So he used to lay in this bed with a cuff on his foot connected to the bed, so he couldn't get out of the bed. He couldn't move around. That's the way it was. Anyways, I would visit him from time to time. One day, they say to me that he's being moved. Where's he being moved? His brother is a big doctor, and he has a hospital in a northeastern city. And the family says that since he is already at this stage of his life where he's not going to live too much longer, they wanted to bring him home. They should die with them. And the government decided to let him send him there. Why spend money on him? You can send him to his brother. He'll take care of him. He'll bury him, whatever the case might be. He was already very, very sick. So I said goodbye to him. And he went to his buddy. He said, "Go forget me," he says to me. Anyway, a few weeks later, I decided, she said not to forget him. So I decided I want to go see him. So I decided to go see him. So I called up the hospital. "I'd like to see him." 1 second. They put me on hold. Guy comes on the phone. "You can't see him." "Why can't you see him?" "He cannot be seen by anybody. His family says no seeing him." "What do you mean his family?" His brother's the head of the hospital." "That's true. They said not to see him." So I said, "I'm coming to see him anyways." So he said, "1 second, hold on a second." So the guy comes on the phone and he says to me, "Listen, I'm the head of the hospital here and you're not coming to see me. If you come, you're not going to be let in. So don't waste your time. Who are you?" So I told him my name. And I'm a friend of your brother, and I got to know him while he was in prison in Miami and so forth. And now I'd like to see him. He says, "There's no way you're going to see him." I said, "That's fine, no problem." I said, "I'm going to come, but I'm not going to come myself. I'm going to bring the 3 networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, because this is a great story. You have a brother who's almost dying. He wants to see his rabbi. And the brother who owns the hospital doesn't want him to see him. So don't worry about it." He says, "You're a rabbi? You're going to do that?" So I said to him, "You're a brother of a human being who his rabbi wants to see him, and you're going to do that?" He says, "Oh, okay, see him, but no publicity." I said, "I'm not interested in publicity. I'm interested in your brother." He said, "My brother's already almost at the end of his days. There's not much to see." I said, "I want to come see him." He asked me not to forget him. I want to come see him. So I called the shliach from that place that lives near there, not too far. I said, "Listen, I'm going to this hospital. The guy owns the hospital. Maybe it's a good idea for you to come and meet him. You'll come with me." So he says, "Okay." So we go together. We drive to London, LaGuardia Airport. We drove a few hours. We came to the hospital. Got inside. I announced myself. So he said, "1 second, please." All of a sudden, a big burly nurse comes out, like a bodybuilder nurse kind of person. So, "Okay, come with me." And they take me downstairs through the back hallways, almost through the laundry room over there, and through a back elevator. And we go up to, I don't know which floor, I don't remember. Takes me floor, and you go out and go into the room. And they said, "Okay, go inside there. You'll have a few minutes, and then you'll leave." I take a look, there's nobody there. I see a wire coming down, like an IV wire coming down to this body. And there's a guy, but I couldn't hardly see the body. He was so thin already that he was laying in bed covered up. You could almost not see a person. So they said to me, "He's already in a coma. There's nobody to talk to." I said, "Okay." I walked over to him, put my hand on him. I said to him, "Yaakov, Jack." He opens his eyes. "Rabbi, what are you doing here?" So the nurse starts screaming out, "Hey, he's up, he's a miracle, a miracle." And he says, code blue, whatever, the big oxygen, it's a miracle, he woke up. So I said, "Listen, ma'am, you told me I have a few minutes here. If you see, I just woke him up. If you don't leave me alone with him for a few minutes, I'm going to put him back to sleep." So they let me stay with the person for a few minutes. Sat down. He looked at me and he said, "To them, I've been dead for many years already. But to you, I'm still alive." That's exactly what he said. I said, "Would you like to wrap the tefillin?" He says, "Yes." And it was the last day of his life. I put on tefillin with him. The next day he passed away. In the darkness of that space, the only thing that kept him alive was the fact that he had a Yiddish neshama. Only that fact that he was a ben yachid to the Eibishter. a beloved child of the Eibishter, that nobody cared about. His own brother didn't care about it. His own family didn't care about it. He was a dead man to them. To them, he was laying there, he's over. He only was alive to me. He wasn't alive to me for any physical reason. I never got anything from him. I didn't expect anything from him, nor from his brother, nor from his family. The only reason he was alive to me is because to the Rebbe, he was alive. To the Rebbe, he was important. The Rebbe taught me a number of years before that not to forget the single Jew that might call out to you. So our objective is to fulfill the Ratzon and the timing of the Eibishter. On a practical way is to bring godliness into this physical world on a practical level, to really mean it in a certain way. It's not always easy because we're so involved with our own things and we are our own growth, and we have to be a Shidduchid, and we have to learn Torah, and we have to do mitzvahs, and we have to raise our children, we have to raise our families, we have to raise money, we have to make a meisid, and it's all very interesting. But you just heard Rabbi Schapiro say so clearly. He said, that changed. To do work, the inyanim of Hafatzah Bayanas and all that, generally speaking, he didn't need the person to go out and put on tefillin. He needed to be a shliach to do that. Every single yid has to do that. But since we have to get it done, so we get it done. But the key is to internalize the process, to make it happen internally, to make it work. As I told you many times to a lot of people here, I learned time with many of you know him. He spoke publicly a few times for Chabad. He spoke Gimel Thomas in New York. He's one of the doctors, one of the neurologists by the Rebbe. He brought Dr. Moore to the Rebbe. His name was Barry Baumel. He's the head of one of the departments of neurology at the University of Miami of Alzheimer's and dementia. He's the chairman of that department. A big researcher, is well known in his research in his field. High-level person. So he's been learning Tanya since Tafshin Nundalad, we started learning Tanya. You know, before Gimel Thomas even. Because he came to see the Rebbe, and he once said to people, he said he doesn't understand. He looked around at the island, he's speaking to Rivka there, and Gimel Thomas. I think it was Hayden Vav. And one of those years, immediately after Gimel Thomas. So he said he didn't understand. He says, the Rebbe impacted my life when he couldn't speak anymore. I can imagine how he impacted your lives. So he said publicly in front of a big island, including doctors, he said, Tanya changed his perspective of neurology. That's what he said. Which means that Chai Elul has to change our perspective of how we approach our lives in a practical way. That's the key. That's the whole process. And to bring it into the practical way, into the lowest levels that exist, not into the highest levels that exist, into the lowest levels that exist, into the simple world where you're dealing with practical things on a practical daily basis. So that's what the Rebbe said, that the Alter Rebbe taught us how you can serve the Eibishter. That this Ratzon of the Eibishter, to fulfill our objective, what our objective is, to fulfill the Eibishter's Ratzon, he needs us. Imagine that he needs us. And imagine, if you think about Chayas and Elul, Chayas in this whole process of Adila Deidi V'Eili, in Avedis of Hashem, that affects every part of Elul because it has to answer something. It doesn't create an exclusivity, only in Adila Deidi V'Eili, but not the other factors. The Adila Deidi V'Eili makes everything completely different. Because when you're connected to the Eibishter in such a way that it's that you understand, that you think, that you analyze, and you try to understand what's going on in my life. And how do I relate to the Eibishter? And what does it mean? And when you learn about Tanya, you want to know what does it mean? That must be in What does it mean? It must be in It's a word. So it's a difference of opinion. If it's Tanya, if it's a Bais, if it's a Simloi, and all the get into that. That's all significant and very important. But the critical factor is that we are connected to our neshama from before it came into this world. This is an eternal connection from all the way back to all the way forward. And we impact the world, not only ourselves, but we impact every single Jew. Like it says, that we impact every single Jew. You do a teva to Ayid, you do a teva with the Nefesh Lekis Hakdum Da'ak. You do a teva to the Shama as it stands in the original primordial Eibishter himself until Seif Kol HaDaitis, including Mashiach. So that's the practicality. That means that we take the Avodas of an Elul David, and you bring it into a practicality and make it alive and put it into the practicality of your work on a daily basis. And you know that to know if you have a chayus. What does it mean if you have a chayus? So I know this is going to sound very plain, very regular, and very mundane, and it's not, you might say, super chassidish and so forth. But you think to yourself on a practical level, so what does it mean? You wake up in the morning. Do you ever see a child get up in the morning? I see little children get up in the morning. They get up in the morning, they dance out of the bed. They get up and jump out of the bed. You don't find a kid that's going to roll on one side, then roll the other side, and then he's going to figure it out. Should he get up? He gets out of bed, he's jumping, he's already rushing, he's next. He's running to his toys, he's running to do something because he has a life in it. And his little limited, naive mind, that's his life. That's what man. It means that simple naivete that occupies your whole existence, that should take your whole existence when you move into a more mature level of existence. That same level, that's what the Alter Rebbe says. Shema Yibul Tzaddik means you're able to rely on that original naivete that you were when you was a kid. So you know to yourself, you wake up in the morning, you jump out of bed, you think to yourself, another 5 minutes. You hit the alarm clock again, the snooze. Maybe another 7 minutes. I'll make it in time, don't worry about it. We'll hit it, and you come rushing through and everything. Or do you get up and say, I'm here today to serve the Eibishter. I gotta fulfill my mission. I was talking to a little child. Tomorrow she has a birthday party, this little child. So she can't sleep tonight already. Why? Because she's thinking about the birthday party tomorrow. This little child thinking about her birthday party. But to the little child, to a 5-year-old, that's what they think about. There's the birthday party tomorrow, to 6-year-old, to 7-year-old. Think about the birthday party tomorrow. When we go to sleep at night, should we not sleep because we're thinking about what we have to fulfill tomorrow? I say, oh my God, get out of bed. Father, get off the Zooms, get off the classes, get off the bodies. That's it. What do you think? Boy, I gotta get up. That's what I'm saying. It's not an easy process, what I'm suggesting here. It's not an easy process, but if you want to take it to the next level, we want to really fulfill what the Rebbe said, that I'm leaving it to you. I did what I could, now I'm leaving it to you. What does that mean? I did what I could, I'm leaving it to you. But the guys like us, he's leaving it to us. What does that mean? It means to say that he put into us the power to be able to get it done. Because what we get done, the work that we get done, we know ourselves. I know myself, and I'm sure that if you don't fool yourself, you know yourself. Anything that you get done that's real, you think, how did it happen? It's not that I have such brains, not that I have such capacity. The Eibishter to give you the bracha, and the Rebbe gave you the bracha. The Rebbe sent you, and you go with the Teichem Shalech. That's it. So when you go to sleep at night and you think to yourself, what am I going to do to put a chayus in my Elul? Not theoretically, not just to get into the learning side of it and to get into that philosophical side of it and what's the pshat in chayus and what's pshat in kan and what's pshat in darf. All that is fantastic. But how do you make it practical in life itself? You put it into your own existence. Because if you have it in your own existence, you can convey it that way. Because real is real. When a person knows you're real, they accept it that way. So it changes the whole form, it changes the whole environment, changes everything around you. It's got to be for real. Chayus and Elul has got to get away from its philosophy, from its theory, from its history. It's got to get into what it is today with us. What does it mean to be to put life force into Aniva David. The Rebbe said so. And he couldn't, and he repeated it time and time again. And he asked us to do it. And we know that we have a responsibility. And I tell people all the time, we have a responsibility. Our responsibility is not only because they put us into this world and we have a tachlis kavanas to make a deal. Of course, everybody has their responsibility. We have another responsibility. The Yid, the reason they hate the Yid, you know why they hate the Yid? So the Rabban writes to get a statement that the real fundamental halacha is of Saint Yaakov. What's the union of why is the Eibishter? Because we represent the Eibishter. When they see a Yid, they know that we are the Am HaNivchar. We didn't say so. We didn't choose ourselves. The same Bible that they believe also in the Bible. The Goyim also believe in the Bible. That Bible says that we are the Am HaNivchar. And so we represent the Eibishter, but that's abstract. It's an abstraction. We represent the Eibishter. A lot of guys said, choose somebody else or whatever. And many people, many Jews, unfortunately today, they live like Goyim. They look like Goyim, chas v'sholom. Of course, they have a nefesh l'kiyus. We're not going to lose a single person. Not a single Jew will be left behind, as you know. But you can get lost. You're going to think you represent the Eibishter. I represent myself. I believe different than you do. But the shliach of the Rebbe, a Lubavitcher Chassid represents the Rebbe. When they see you, they say, this is the Rebbe's representative. You call yourself that. That's the name shliach. Shliach shalom k'maaseh. However you interpret that shlichus. The Rebbe interpreted that the whole person is like that. The whole shlichus is like that. So under those circumstances, the chayes in Elul has to be a completely different level. It has to make a difference in our own lives. It has to make a difference in how we speak. The chayes should be that our life force has to be the Rebbe's life force. Practical things. A Chassidish Yid should make sure that he speaks like a Chassidish person, that he behaves like a Chassidish person, that his jokes are Chassidish jokes, that his stories are Chassidish stories. And even though, a person can leak in holy stuff, and therefore he doesn't have to watch how his pants are dressed, but we're not on that level. We have to walk and make sure that Rebbe was impeccable. He wasn't, the Rebbe could care less. He wore the same pair of shoes for 50 years. The Rebbe it wasn't about having a nice suit and not a nice suit. You see, the Rebbe should go into his room. It happened to me. One time the Rebbe, the door was a little open. I was standing there, and the Rebbe walked into his room. He took off his hat and he just flipped it across the room. And he didn't take his hat like nice and put it down, satechne. He could care less about it, but like a king. And we represent the king on every level. How we speak, how we walk, how we behave. Chayes and Elul is not theory. It's not about aesthetics. It's not about getting into another space. Chayes and Elul means how we live our life on a practical level, on a practical day, every single day. And then you bring the Chayes and Elul, Chayes and Adil, Leib, start with davening. Everything has to have a practicality. So check something out. Next few days, next to 12 days, daven pashut every davening. Make sure you daven with Pidgin Milus. Make sure you know exactly what you're saying. Daven a few minutes slower. Don't worry about it yet. See, the point will take for a little bit longer. It doesn't matter. Daven Pidgin Milus, Shachas, Menachem. Just know what you're saying. Baruch Atah Hashem. Know what you're talking to God Himself. Right, direct, one, two. Atah, not let's start Tao. In the Chabad Sidurim, there's no Tao. Tao, you ask a kid, what's Tao? They don't know what Tao is. Tao is, some story. You, blessed are you. This is no Tao. And you think about it. on a practical level. And you say to that every single day when you wake up in the morning, thank you, Hashem, you just gave me back my life. Some of us that had experiences where we were pretty much in a precarious state, we understand what it means. Hashem gave me back my life. But he gave each one of us back his life on a practical level. And when you make a just the next 12, it's just 12 days. If you're asking someone else to do it, you've got to be able to do it yourself. So think about it. You're bringing a chayes into Elul, or is it just a story of Farbrengen, Saturday night or Sunday night or whatever the case is, and then we go into the practicalities of life and we do our thing the way it was before? Or does the whole day change, the whole period change? And that change in that period is not only a change for that period, but a change in our own internal self that sustains that change continuously. And it'll make a difference. Make a difference in your relation with others, make a difference in your relation with yourself, make a difference in your relation with the Rebbe, make a difference because you'll be conscious of it. So you say to yourself, theory is theory, but practicality is practicality. You got to bring it down in Temtad, that part of the placha. You got to make sure that it works in a practical way in today's day and age. How does it make a difference today in your life? Am I going to daven differently? Try that. Bring a chayes and a needle what the Alter Rebbe did. You learn Tanya after you finish learning the daily Tanya. I was telling the group of guys before, I did an experiment in 1981. I had a period of time that I was doing some my own experiments, a study that Rebbe gave me permission to do. Anyway, so I was involved in something. So one of the things, I went to 770. I used to go every Shabbos to 770. So I went to the Farbrengen. So I went a few times. And I went Sunday morning to the shul, and I would ask guys, "Did you learn Chitas today?" Yeah. So let's say just to give you a marshal, out of 10 guys that said they learned Chitas, some guys said, "Oh, I learned it later. I didn't learn it yet." The 10 guys that said I learned Chitas. So I asked them, "Did you learn Tanya today?" Yeah. So I started discussing with Tanya. Usually, no more than 2 guys really were able to share with me what they learned in Tanya. Tanya, I'll leave it in Nafshe. Chabad. And I didn't really learn it, but I said, that's not what it is. Chayes in Elul means to bring your life into Elul in a different way, that it makes a difference in your practicality of life. In my practicality of life, as I said to you earlier, I'm not talking to you and saying, hey, you guys have to be such and such. I'm talking to myself. I'm just sharing a conversation. I'm speaking out loud. You talk to yourself and you think you're nuts. But this is somebody else is there, so at least think you're crazy. You think you're listening somehow. In any case, they should help us. We should bring a chayes in Elul, a chayes in a needle, chayes in closing Elul. It's Hashem that Elul should bring us the right thing. We need it. We need it already. We want Mashiach now, in the best way, in the worst way. Even people that never talked about Mashiach and so forth are already talking. We need Mashiach. We need Mashiach already. So, we were lucky. We got a head start on the whole process. We know that he's mamish on the doorstep. We're already knocking at the door. Meitzes Menachem is looking through the cracks. He's waiting us. We even shine the kneplas and so forth. And we should Hashem be Masliach and everything that we do.
Shkoyach for the introduction. Now in say L'chaim, and then we'll start the Farbrengen. L'chaim. Rabbi Lipskar.
You have a lot of steam on this chat. Maybe someone else can answer.
You're the Farbrenger. L'chaim. It's important that everybody say L'chaim, that you don't just sit at home and just do that we taking an active role in the Farbrengen. And the Zok L'chaim zusammen.
Yeah, doesn't somebody have somebody good amount of tape that we can sing along with? That some some
put up some.
There's no. I'm sure there's guys that know how to deal with these electronics can find some nigun in there. Rebbe's nigun.
There's a nigun Yoshin from the Alter Rebbe. 1 second.
Oh.
L'chaim, l'chaim.
Long time in a minute.
Chaim, Rabbi Lipskar, I want to ask you, in your community, be able to bring the Chassidishkeit and the idea of Chai Elul, into the very, very practical, livable way, making an impact on people, making Chassidim, even people that are, it's interesting, because even people that are like not, full-fledged, let's say, full people necessarily, but they know a Rebbe, they know Chassidus, and, if you could share with us, Chassidim, Shluchim, as Chayil will come of the world, and we want to share with others, the Pashut, the in simple words, practical words, what is Chassidus? What is Rebbe? Why we need a Rebbe? Why we need Chassidus in their life? Why should they learn Chassidus? How to make it real for them as well. Chaim Chaim.
Hi, the bracha. So, you ask a question, I'm sure everybody here has that answer, has some answer to that. So the fundamental thing, there's one fundamental point. The fundamental point is that the Rebbe is a center point of this process, obviously, in a practical way. That everybody knows that it's the Rebbe's keiches, the Rebbe's power, the Rebbe's ability. Ad kidei kach, just to give you perspective, I told this already a few times to this in the Shluch convention of it. We're just going to tell you again the impact of the Rebbe. So, as you know, we're building a big addition to our Bais. Baruch Hashem, it's moving along. It's much more expensive than we thought. It's a lot of money. In any case, we needed to have a foundation guy, a person that gives a serious amount. You have to raise $30 million or so plus. So you need somebody that's going to put in nice money. You can't just collect $1,000, $10,000, even $100,000. But you really need a lot of people for that. You need one center point. So I went to one of my Baalabatim. And I mentioned it to them because one of the persons that initially I thought was going to do it, whatever, to due to economics, other factors, he was not able to. So, I didn't move forward. He didn't move forward and so forth. I was left like this without anybody. So I sat down with one of my people, a very close relationship with him. And I said to him, I want you to know that, this building is very important. It's important for the community. And it's important for the Jewish people, et cetera, et cetera. And I gave him a whole song and dance and the whole spiel. And he knows, he participates, and he believes in what we're doing. And he's been a serious donor over many years. So it's not like it's not a new guy that I had to sell him into the process. He's basically sold into the process. So I said to him, this major structure on Collins Avenue, it's a very important thoroughfare. They say 100,000 cars drive by it during the season, 100,000 people or whatever. They'll see, you put a sign on it, your name is going to be on top of it. Or this is a center dedicated by you, your family's name. He says, Rabbi, he said, I love you very much, and I like what you're doing. It's not for me. We're not into that. That doesn't resonate with me. Nothing like that. Anyways, last end. He said, no. Anyways, that night I was sitting at home and I was talking to my son. I was thinking about it, and I said to myself, what kind of fool am I? This Rebbe's Mesa, it'd be such a beautiful space, beautiful building. So if you're going to see it, I'm not naming it after anybody. I'm going to name it after the Rebbe. The Rebbe's name on it. It's the Rebbe's Mesa anyways. And that's it. No question about it. So the Rebbe's name is going to be on top of the building. This is the name named after the Rebbe. The Rebbe's name, that's the name of this center. So the next day, I give him a call and I said, I need to see you for a few minutes, just a few minutes. He said, sure, anytime. What do you want me to come over? I said, if you don't mind, okay, you can come over. It'd be very helpful. Anyways, he said, I'll be over after my office. I'll stop by. Came to my office. I said, I want to just mention something to you. I just want to mention it to you because, you told me not mention such a thing, but I just want to say maybe you are interested. It could be, it's possible. I said I would name the name after the Rebbe, the whole building, and then in little small words, it's going to be dedicated by this and this family. He says to me, my name is going to be next to the Rebbe's name. the name's going to be on the name of the Rebbe, the building's going to be on the Rebbe's name. How much? I made a deal with him right there. Can you imagine such a thing? Not his covered, nothing. I don't need nothing. My name should be next to the Rebbe's name. Every time the guy makes a move, make sure you write a letter to the Rebbe. The Rebbe should know. So number one is the Rebbe. That's the number one thing. The number two thing is very important. What I said earlier about Chayil is not a joke. So again, this is already public information, but I can just repeat it because you asked the question. So there was a Yechidus with the Rebbe in Tafshalam B'Daled with the Young Leadership Cabinet of the UJA. There's 13 members of the Young Leadership Cabinet of the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Daily, Young Leadership of the United Jewish Appeal came to the Yechidus. So it happens to be that the Rebbe invited me to come to that Yechidus, along with the two other shluchim there. Shlomo Kino was there and Rabbi Moshe was there, together with the Maskilim. And before the Yechidus, they met in the Rebbe's library next door. And after Yechidus, we met again. The Yechidus lasted for an hour and a half. They all had chairs. There were chairs set up in the Rebbe's room, like folding chairs. They all sat down on chairs. We stood in the back. And for an hour and a half, the Rebbe spoke in English. It's now, I think, I had a tape of that because one of the people there made a tape that someone stole it from me. I told many people. I don't know who stole it, but I saw it already in print. I saw some of the stuff that was printed, so I know that it's somewhere to be found. In any case, so he asked the Rebbe all kinds of questions. The Rebbe questions about Russian Jewry. At that time, this is you're talking about 1975. Russian Jewry. They asked the Rebbe questions about 1974, excuse me. I asked the Rebbe questions about education and about assimilation and they asked the Rebbe about fundraising. What's the Rebbe's funding? The Rebbe said to them, if you gave me $100,000, the Rebbe said at that time, I could save 100,000 Jewish children through summer camps. Anyway, that's a different issue. So the Rebbe asked him about fundraising. So the Rebbe said, fundraising, there's a so the Rebbe said in English, a short and long way, the long and short way. What's the short and the long way? You ask a person for a donation. And you tell them how much you need it and that you need to impact people. And you have a story, and you have a great story. You have to save a Jew, you have to save a family, you have to save a place, you have to save a community, you have to turn on the lights, whatever the case is. You really impact the person, and you're a very, very capable salesman in areas of Jewishness, and you impact the person. And the guy takes out a check, writes you a check. You got the check right away. The reason it's short and long way, because next year you have to do it again. You have to tell another story. Let's say next year there's a better story. Federation has a better story, or the MDA, the Magen David Adom has a better story, or the Friends of the IDF has a better story. You're out of the picture. I'm sorry, there's very much needs. Why? Because your story was good now, and next story did. So it's always every year you got to come with another poem story with another lead, etc., etc. That's the short and long way. The long and short way is to make your project his project. Then you don't have to ask him for money anymore, because your project is his project. That's the Nakuda. The Nakuda is that he has to buy into the system. He has to have skin in the game. You have to want to do it. It happens to be that my board of directors, I'm pushed up, I'm fortunate. I have guys who's the who's who in America, lawyers, the biggest lawyers, the best lawyers in America, Harvard educated lawyers. My president, going to be my president now, extraordinary guy. And he has big clients, etc. Now, the man is so serious about it. He has meetings with me. What can we do this year to impact the society? What can we do to impact not only society, but since the Rebbe said that we have to be a pilot project, how we impact the society that other people can follow it. It's about conveying that message. Now, So you have two things. Number one, that Rebbe is the center point, as I said before. Number two, the long and short way. You got to really make your project. He's got to buy into your system. He's got to buy into your program. Even if he's not 100% a Chassidish Yid, and he's not yet a Shemitah Mitzvah 100%, he's got to buy into your program. He's got to make your priority. It's got to be his priority. And that's a very important process. And it takes time, and it takes effort, it takes thought, and it takes learning. And the third thing, which could be sometimes the most important, I'm not saying, of course, I'm not minimizing the importance of the Rebbe and so forth, but in terms of the most important thing, the impact side of it, it's that you got to live what you're saying. You got to live it. He's got to know that what you're saying, you are the story. It's for real. This guy's for real. He really means it. He lives that way. He feels that way. It doesn't mean that you have to be a pauper in order to be able to get money for your Meiser. On the contrary, you're Ben Melech. You represent the Rebbe. But in your lifestyle, you have to live what you are conveying to him that you want him to do. You have to live that way. And they respect it. All of a sudden it's real. And they have respect for it. Because in the rest of the world, there's nothing that's real out there. It's all a bunch of Baba Mices. It's a bunch of PR. It's fake news or whatever the case is. It's the alter ego. You create a vision of yourself or whatever you want to create through any kind of perspective. It's who you are in terms of how they perceive you in the reality of life. That's that's the key aspect. And the next thing is that's critical. There's nothing to replace that. If it's not for real, forget about it. If your guy knows that the fact of the matter is that you know what's going on in football sometimes is necessary because you need an opening to have the conversation with him. I know we have the Brachim Shlochim by us. So one of the things I tell the Brachim Shlochim all the time, don't ask a guy what he does for a living. He used to be the guys used to come back to me and say, you know what this guy does? You know what he has? I didn't know myself. I knew the guy for 10 years. I didn't know whether he had a boat. And it wasn't part of my repertoire with him. And he knew that it wasn't part of my repertoire with him, and it didn't matter to him. All of a sudden, you enter into that kind of a space. That space, you're just another guy down the street that he wants to be a big shot to. It doesn't matter. What he wants from you is ruchnius. He wants from you to know that you are his conduit to the Eibishter. You're his conduit to the Rebbe. You're his conduit to Yiddishkeit. You're his conduit to his process of success from a spiritual point of view that affects his physical point of view. That's what he needs to know. So that's critical. There's no question that all of those things are fundamental, and you have to make sure that they happen in terms of how you behave, how you act. And I said again, I've had many instances, and unfortunately, people that I know very well and I respect a lot, and they tell stories, they tell jokes that are not nice jokes. And they use language that's not nice language. And they think it's like you're part of the company, these guys, they like it, and they laugh. This guy tells the best jokes. No, that's not what you're there for. For that, they can open up the television, listen to the best joke tellers. In America, they don't need a shliach to be able to tell them a joke. They don't need a shliach to be able to tell them words of society. That's not what we have to do. On the contrary, you're destroying your image in terms of your representation of the Rebbe. You are a representative. Every moment you are, that's your representation. And it has to come across real and in a practical way, in an obvious way. And then there's another factor. And that is, as I said the other day, what's in it for me? Everybody has to know what's in it for me. How do I benefit from this process? What's in it for my life, for my relationships, for my success, for my being? What's in it for me? Chassidus talks about how it affects me. That's the key. That's the process. And when, first of all, I have a custom. Every single time I sit down with Balabas, every time I have a meeting, every time. When I say every time, I'm talking about every single time. I always begin my conversation with the word of Torah, a word from the Rebbe, some word. It changes the whole environment. The whole environment, it begins at a different level. Even if I have to ask him for something, I start, that's what I say. I said, the Rebbe says, I'll tell you an interesting story one time. I had that meeting with the Satmar Rebbe. And the Satmar Rebbe was, this is also a very interesting picture. I went to Satmar Rebbe's house. He asked me to come. I went myself, and I went with a lawyer from Olive. My brother was with me, my older brother, and we went to Satmar Rebbe's house in Williamsburg. It was a beautiful, beautiful house, like a mansion. And we met, and as I walked into the house, there was a big, like a board table, a big giant table with plush chairs around it. And around it was about 11 Rebelach, the Chachike Rebbe, the Petchke Rebbe, you know, all kind of Rebelach from Borough Park, from Williamsburg, from all over. You know, they have like a bunch of Rebbes. The main Rebbe, of course, is the Satmar Rebbe, but they're all like pseudo Rebelach. They have their Stiebelach, they have the Rebelach, they're all around there, including two of his sons were there. Anyways, everybody sat around. They told me to sit up front. I sat right next to him. There was a front seat, like a throne chair, so to speak. And then I sat on his left side. On the side, I sat there. That's when I sat. My lawyer, the lawyer from Olive sat next to me. My brother sat next to him, and all the Rebbes were sitting around it. Anyways, all of a sudden he came in. Everybody got up. He walked in, sat down. He says, "Me." He looks at me. He says, "Haiptun, start." So he already knew who I was, obviously, because it was a matter that was pertinent to him. This matter. So I started saying the words. Before I started, I wasn't so sophisticated politically to get the whole picture. So I said, the Rebbe said, I spoke in Yiddish, the Rebbe had gesagt, as jedem Ovos, that's the Chabek HaNasif, is a Manodim Etabat. All of a sudden, I get a whack under the table. He gives me a kick under the table. I thought I'm not talking about like a little reminder. I'm talking about a kick that had a black and blue mark for a few weeks. The Rebbe was a very intelligent person. He sensed it. He sensed it because I cringed. Because without wham, all of a sudden you get a hammer on your nail, kind of thing. So he cringed. So he sensed something. And he said like this, because the guy next to me says, "You're talking about you bringing the Lubavitcher Rebbe in, and you're talking about his feeling from the Satmar Rebbe." So the Satmar Rebbe said these words: "The Lubavitcher Rebbe is an undersorte Rebbe. Zugvate." Tell us what you have to say. So that's a practicality in a very simple sense. So you ask me what is necessary in order to be able to impact people around you. It's a process. But the process begins with me, with you and me. It begins with how we behave. When we represent the Rebbe, there's nothing that stops us. Shaleach, represent the Rebbe. I told this group the other day a story that I heard. You know, Chassidim talk about the Rebbe's maskinim, etc. You know, it's kind of pretty, etc. You know, sometimes maski sometimes can make a mistake and think that he's like the boss. So you got to make sure you know who you are. So it happens to be. So he tells the story that the king, he needed to send a message to the front lines of the army. They were having a very important battle. So the king had to send a messenger, but had to get there right away. And it was a long drive. It was a 3-day ride. But the faster they would get there, the better the strategy would be in order to conquer the enemy. So the king asked to bring the best horse rider they can find. Who's the best horse rider? The best horse rider is not the minister. He's not the assistant to the king. He's not the secretary of the king. The best horse rider is the guy that deals with horses all day, a horse rider. So they go into the horses area, the place where they race horses, and they find the best horse rider. A whole day he's racing horses and dealing with horses. He has nothing to do with the king. He has nothing to do with intelligence. He has to do with intellect. He has to do with horses. So they hired this guy they said, the king needs you. He comes to the king. The king says, I need to deliver this and this letter. In order to get there quickly, he said, I'm giving you a special kind of insignia that's going to be on your horse. It's going to be representing the king. And whenever you come into a place, they're going to refresh your horse. They're going to give you a place to sleep. But I need you to get there as quickly as possible. How fast can you get there? He said, I can get there as quickly as, instead of 3 days, I can get there in 2 days. 2 days, beautiful. And he sends him on his way. He stops, the first place he stops, the first city he stops, he's ready. He rode for 15 hours and he's driving his horse crazy, but his horse, he gives out to it. It's enough. Even though he's a great horse rider, stops, comes to a town, shows that his insignia. Oh, the king's messengers here. They bring him into the best hotel there is. They take his horse and they feed the horse and they wash the horse and they rest the horse and everything is. He never had such a. They give him the best food. What would you like to eat? You want steak? The guy was a farmer. He didn't know nothing. He never was served this way. He used to eat kasha and borscht. And all of a sudden, he's treated like a king because he represented the king. Anyways, next day he goes, the next town, the same thing happens, so forth. Suddenly he gets to the army base. He walks in, they see the horse of the king and the insignia of the king on the saddle. Everybody stands up. Wow, the king's representative is here. He asks, where's the generals? I have a special messenger for them. He said, there's in the tent at the end of the camp over there. He goes to the tent over there and there's guards standing there. Who are you? Oh, yes. What do you do? I have a special message I have to deliver to the general. You open the door and they bring him in. All the generals jump up. Message from the king. They jump up. They stand up. At attention. They salute. They take the message. And he goes out. He says, okay, that's it. He goes outside. All the soldiers, they surround him. Who are you? They gave you such honor, such dignity. Who are you? What kind of person are you? So he started telling him how he's a horse rider, and the king took him and he tells them stories. He's telling stories, and they're an hour. They're all listening to every story he has to say. Suddenly, the doors open up to the tent, and the generals come out. The generals come out. All the soldiers jump up, stand at attention with a salute. This guy is sitting on the floor, smiling, having a drink. They gave him a l'chaim. He's partying. He's a big boy. All of a sudden, the military police come and they pick him up and they schlep him over to the jail. So what do you take me? So what do you mean? The generals came out of the tent and you didn't stand up to salute them. You're sitting there like nothing. So what are you talking about? An hour and a half ago, I walked in there, they were standing up for me. Don't you know that? Everybody was standing up for me. He says, an hour and a half ago, you represented the king. Now you're just a farmer, horse driver. That's it. That's the key. You got to be the representative of the king. We got the representative of the king. That means from the morning we say, we represent the king. You have to feel it. It's not only a word, you have to feel it to represent the king. Now, sometimes it can cause you a real problem. Representing the king doesn't mean that you know that you chas v'shalom, you think, oh, I'm the king. You know yourself who you are. But, the king has a stick. The stick becomes a scepter that represents the king. So we're a stick. But the day Rebbe took the stick, me and you. I'm talking about me, took a push the guy. Yeah, regular guy. No special talents, no special I was standing. A guy, a Jew, a Yid that was born of a Chassidish father and mother, and born of a Chassidish grandparents, went back, took the stick, and he said, "This stick, you are representing me, I'm going with you." But that's the only way you're going to be successful. So you ask the question, how do you impact the community? You impact the community, first of all, impacting yourself. You have to convey yourself to the community, not you have to convey yourself like an alter ego, because that doesn't work. Because every single day every minute you got to work on it. And sometimes you fail. You have to transform yourself into knowing that you represent the Rebbe. That you represent the Rebbe. Doesn't mean you're a Rebbe, Chas v'shalom. That's not the point. But you do represent him, because otherwise don't call yourself shliach. Call yourself an employee. Call yourself, I'm part of the system. I'm part of the organization. Shliach means shluchi shalom.
That's when the other person knows the king. The other person doesn't know the king. He doesn't recognize the king. He doesn't know anything about the Rebbe, and you're trying to go to a donors who do.
That's it. I'm going to stop you right now, because that's an obvious question. The answer is very simple. He knows the king through you. How you behave, that's how he knows the king. Because he knows, and you tell him that the reason I am who I am is because of the king. He doesn't know the king because he knows the king. He doesn't know it. To many people in our community and your community yourself, you're like the Rebbe to them. You know, they never had a Rebbe. They never went to the Rebbe. They never got a dollar from the Rebbe. I was by this person, not a chassid. I told you, another guy, a big misnagid, The biggest gift that I could give him was $1 from the Rebbe. And the $1 from the Rebbe, it wasn't $1 from the Rebbe, because he doesn't know the Rebbe. It was the fact that I gave him the $1 that the Rebbe gave me. I said, I got this $1 direct from the Rebbe, because he got it. Somebody told him, he says, here's $1 from the Rebbe. And he took a look at the $1, and on the $1 it says 2005. He said, 2005, how does the $1 from the Rebbe have 2005 on it? He knew it was a Baba Maisa. So I sent him $1 from the Rebbe, and on the $1 it says 1985. Yeah, it's the $1 that I got from the Rebbe. So I sent him $1, $1 from the Rebbe. You can't imagine how it impacted his life. So you say to him, they don't know the Rebbe. They know the Rebbe through you. That's what I'm saying the whole time. When you represent the Rebbe, you show them what the Rebbe is, and the Rebbe could make you who you are. A simple guy that doesn't even know, that never went to an English school, and he's talking to the governor of the state of Florida and getting along with him and traveling with him. And he says, hey, how do you get there, man? What'd you do? What do you do? What are you, such a smart guy? Did you ever learn politics? You don't even speak English without an accent. You still have an accent. What are you doing? It's not me, my man. I represent the king. That's the thing. It's you. It's not, you cannot take them into the Rebbe, because this have to give them Thomas. But once you do that, you can take them to the Eyal, because they know that there's a power there. But it's you who represents that position. It's you that makes that difference. Because they know when they see you, they don't see a guy who's a politician, who's a bad smash man. A guy who cares about another Jew, who cares about another human being, who learns Chassidus, who talks to him about Hashem, he talks about God. He doesn't talk to him about, I want you to make sure that I get it. You pass a bill that I can make some money over here by your organization. That's not your issue. You talk about bills, about a moment of silence, about impacting Jews. He knows that it's for real. This is a different representation. You can't sell the Rebbe through the Rebbe's. Stories don't make it happen, because there's, you can tell stories about Superman. The same story, you believe it. So it doesn't work that way. Even though after a while you tell stories, of course. ISIS. But why did ever emphasizing these flows? Because that wasn't the issue. It was internalized. It was a whole different perspective, a whole different way of looking at it.
The truth is, there's very similar story at one time. Chaim.
Before you had a beautiful niggin, let's do another niggin. A little chayas over here, that enough Drena Kop over here. There's a Chiddushkeit, a little Warmkeit. Oh, now we're getting a niggin.
Let's see. Let me just see a second. It's actually
So I want to say, first of all, Shkayach to Rabbi Eichmann, who was very instrumental in putting this whole thing together, to have a Farbrengen tonight. Chai Elul is very, very important, and made it happen. And, he's been, he is so persistent. He doesn't let you go. So eventually you have to say yes. You can't, you keep saying no, and then one day you have to say yes, because otherwise it's going to keep bugging you. So that's a big miler in a certain way, in a positive way. And, for the balabas, you have to be a little more careful. But with a fellow shliach, as I'm Menachem, you know what I mean? Just to get it done. So I want to just publicly tell him Yishkayach, because not for him, I wouldn't be here tonight, to tell you the truth.
There's actually a
Doesn't mean I should be, doesn't mean it's a big deal that I was here tonight, but that's the fact.
It is a big deal. Let me put it.
I know one person that's happy that I'm here tonight. I know she doesn't hear me because she can't hear anything. It's my mother, but she likes to see. She sees my face. That's it. I can see her. She knows. My brother just told her that I'm said that about her. She's trying to say something, but she's muted. My brother muted her because otherwise we'd have a drasha for another 15 minutes.
There's actually a in here. One second, trying to put it out. Somebody posted there.
Yes, it's good that you muted, Ma.
Here it is. Hold on a second. I'm pulling up the nigga from the Rebbe. Somebody.
But Teko b'chaydesh nashi kramki nayulitza besklamki Majna targavati, eight sovas, teko b'chaydesh, ashmi, shova Yisrael, eta. Nashkabai, Tiko b'chaydesh, Ashmi, Shova Yisrael, eta, Nashkabai, And Russian it means Nashi Kramki Naula to Klamki. You don't hold on to the handle, man, you're out of the door. You gotta hold on to it. Hey, so, but what'd you hear? You came back from the Bay and you came back from the Farbrengen. What'd you hear? So, Tika Bachay, Eta, Nashka, Baratsa, Life. That's what we heard, man. That's the Nakudas Apnimis of the whole situation. You got to get into it. You got to get into it. If you're not into it, just forget about it. You got to not into it, it's not Chabad. Got to get a piece of cake, go drink a glass of water. That's it, man. You're sold. Go eat up a pot of chont. Get a good kugel, Depends kugel. There's 6 types of kugel, 20 kind of kugels. I don't know how many kind. There's a bunch of kugels, There's a Yerushalayim kugel, there's a Williamsburg kugel, there's a Monsey kugel, and there's a Williamsburg kugel. There's all kinds of kugels going on. But we want to get it down. There's no kugels. Chabad, there's no kugel. Chabad, man, it's work. Get it done, man. It's not an easy process. And sometimes you have agmas nefesh. You see some of your work, it doesn't work. It hurts. Hurts. So you put in effort, it didn't go. Sometimes with a balabas, sometimes with a community, sometimes with your own child, your own grandchild, your own child. You see, it doesn't work. You do. It's not such a pleasant process. So, you know what you do? You work harder. That's what you do. I got a story today. Someone sent me Alter Rebbe. Big Shvuim said it to me because he knew Big Shvuim. So he went to the Big Shvuim of orphan widows that were captured. In those days they used to capture people and take them for ransom and so forth. So the Alter Rebbe went to get the ransom. So he told two Chassidim went together with the Alter Rebbe, and they went to a place, a town, the biggest miser in the town, the guy that gave never a penny to anything, a wealthy man, a gvira, never gave a penny to anything. So they went to the house and knocked on the door and came in. Alter Rebbe's here. Oh yeah, he received him royally, brought him in, came in, beautiful table, set him up, give him fruit and drink, whatever you want. And Alter Rebbe, table, what do you want to say? Anything. Alter Rebbe said, I care for this and this and this. So, he was known as a big miser. I said, okay, one second. He went back to his safe, came back with a little pouch, and he used to give every single person 1 penny, a copper penny, that even a poor man had nothing to do with it. He gave Alter Rebbe this penny. He told us before he went into the house, he said, listen, whatever you do, whatever happens, don't say one single word. Just don't say a word and don't make a sound. Don't say a word, nothing, whatever I'm going to say. The guy gives the person that says, what do you need? He needs 5,000 rubles, massive amount of money. The guy never gave a penny. He brings out the penny. He says, this is my donation. Alter Rebbe takes the penny, checks out and says, thank you very much. I can't imagine how happy I am. You did such a big mitzvah. The Eibush is going to love you. The Eibush cares about you. You care about another Jew. You just you saved, you gave money to save him. Don't worry about it. It's the best thing in the world. You should have the best year ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And so the guy shakes his hand, and he walks out together with the Chassidim. They walked out. They said, the guy gave him nothing. He said, don't say one word. He walks out toward the gate. As he's walking out, the guy comes to the door. He says, please come back in. Come back in. Comes back in. He comes back out. He takes out from his pocket. Takes out 1,000 rubles. 1,000 rubles. The guy never gave a penny. 1,000 rubles. Again, the Rebbe says, thank you very much, the best thing you ever did. You can imagine, and on top of what you did before, you now did even more. The Rebbe loves you even more. You can't imagine what you did. You saved the Jewish family. You saved a widow and orphans. You saved Jewish people. You fulfilled God's purpose in this whole world. You're the most important person now. He walked away and the guy walks out. Don't say a word. The guy walks out. The guy said, you got him, I gave you $1,000, but the guy's a nutcase. He can't give you more. Rabbi Alter says, I told you not to say one word. He walks to the gate, the guy calls him back. Goes back. Outside pocket, takes out 5,000 rubles. 5,000 rubles. Didn't tell the Rebbe. The Rebbe thanks him again. Same thing. The Chassidim walk out and they said to the Rebbe, what you do here? It was like a miracle. The guy never gives a penny. He gives 1 penny to poor people. How'd you get him to do what you did? So the Rebbe says, let me tell you something. He never felt what it means to do a good thing. Every time he used to give a person a penny, he said, throw it back in his face. Like you guys wanted me to do. Throw it back in his face. Throw it back in his face. He didn't feel good about it. He never gave. He says, now, all of a sudden, he starts to feel good about it. That's the Nakuda. You gotta make the Jew feel good about it. And if you haven't done it yet, if he still is giving you the penny, it means you didn't make him feel good about it. Anyway, Rabbi Erdesman, since you're the organizer of this whole Farbrengen, maybe it's time for you to get somebody to start Farbrengen a little bit, Sometimes it's enough you hear from one guy already almost 2 hours. So it's enough.
If you're still counting the clock, that means you didn't say enough time.
I just looked at my watch just now for the first time.
So I'm saying, if you're still able to make a cheshbon, how long you're talking, it means you're going to say a little more l'chaim.
That's true. That's true. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, guys could be falling asleep over there. You never know what's going on. Everybody's, here the Farbrengen is the interactive process. Farbrengen, I tell my guys over here, when you Farbrengen by me is like this. You let down your hair, and whatever you say in the Farbrengen, it has to remain in the Farbrengen, unless you say things publicly. But if you say things internally in the Farbrengen, whatever stays here happens here, which means it's internalized. This is not that kind of Farbrengen. I don't know who's on this thing. It's on Zoom, it's on this, it's on YouTube, places. How many people are in the Farbrengen? But there's probably a lot of people in the Farbrengen. So it's a different kind of Farbrengen. It's a more public kind of a forum. So that's why it's important, whatever anybody else has to say, because we know not like this. Chai Elul, make a difference in your life, man. Just make it happen. It's time already. Let's just get off the case already. Let's get off this Nattishkeit. Doesn't matter. I'm telling you, there's enough money in this world to do whatever you want to do. There's more money than you even think there is. I'm telling you, there's more money. You think, but not my community. You don't even know what's in your community. Every community's got a lot of money. When you're not in the community, it doesn't matter. Forget about that. Just get it done, man. Start being a representative of the Rebbe in the real way. You think in the morning, Meidan Yilufanecha. Learn Chassidus, Alibud Nafshe. Think about what you're saying. After you learn your Tanya, think it through. Daven with the Kiddush HaMilas. The next 12 days, just get it done. Let's make it happen. Let's not fool around. It's enough already. It's enough already, guys. Over the top, l'chaim.
Speaking about davening, so we'll put a song here by the Rebbe singing. It was posted on Ashreinu recently. The Rebbe singing here. Hold on 1 second. See if I can.
Oh, let's hear it. Oh, yeah. This will end the Rebbe's beginning.
Hold on 1 second.
It's a little over the top over here.
Just a second. Okay. Get that on. it's only by the Rebbe that you could find such a nigun with such a freilichkeit, the Rebbe's his whole thing, but like Chai Elul, the Chais of Elul, but Shuva, the Simcha, and everything is besimcha. It's all everything besimcha. So, but you're talking about before about the fact that the Rebbe, you go to Balabos and talk to him about the Rebbe, and you go with the Rebbe's keiches. This is very true. I have Balabos here in Pensacola, Floyd Levin, was not shaykh to anything, Rebbe's, Chassidus, whatever, and we brought him to the Rebbe's Oyo. And at the Rebbe's Oil, that was after he gave $1 million. I got him. I went and asked him for $1 million for, for Chabad in Gainesville. I was building a building. UF alone, happens to live in Pensacola, so I'm in touch with him. So we were working on that for a while, and when I went over to him and I asked him to give him $1 million, Pasha told him, listen, this is what you're really going to live in this world. You're giving millions here, millions there. This is really, and when we were sitting there by the oil, I told him, listen, you gave $1 million. I asked you to give $1 million to Chabad, and I know usually you never give to religious places or whatever. Everywhere he gave until it was only places where there is other things going on, universities, this, that. So I said, you deserve that I should give you $1 from the Rebbe. And I explained to him how precious it is, $1 from the Rebbe for me. And I was able to get a lot of dollars. And it's not something that I'm just giving away like this. But I said, because I went to you and I asked you and you were ready to do it for the Rebbe, I want to give you a Rebbe's $1. And I gave him the Rebbe. And then he went through illness. He went through the Enamachla. He had, stage 4 in the lungs. And went to him and gave him tefillin and put mezuzahs in his house, and and he always told me that he always, whenever he went to treatment, he always made sure to have the Rebbe's dollars in his pocket. And this is a guy, he doesn't understand what Rebbe is, but when you go with Stoltz and you represent the Rebbe, and it's not about whether it makes sense or doesn't make sense. You're talking from Yunishama to Yidnishama, and that's what it takes. But listen. It's Achona L'chai Elul, and we are sitting here. You said you're almost talking for 2 hours, but the fact there is close to 100 people or more, on the Zoom and the YouTube, it means that people want to hear. So L'chaim, take a L'chaim and go on.
I just want to mention one thing that you mentioned before, that the Rebbe with that's Nesach. So there's a very interesting perspective here. Many times the Rebbe went on sometimes for minutes, people walked in, they said, what is this? This is like a guy's yelling. They say, they don't get it. The continuity of it. There's a psychological reality there. When you do that, it's like a mantra. All of a sudden, it touches you something deeply. I noticed that while they were singing this niggin, every time, all of a sudden, the guys who are on this Zoom, they got into it. There's such a thing as Indian of the Gilus, Hergel Nasuteva, the Gilus. It affects the internal structure. Mice affects essence. When these Nigunim, they touch something very close to the source. The Rabbi Groner called me one time in the early times, and he said to me that Rebbe said that we should send the music into the prisons. You weren't allowed to have tape recorders in the prisons. So we had to manufacture tape recorders. At that time, there were 50 federal prisons. So we manufactured 50 tape recorders that could only play, but could not record. You didn't send anything that could record. And the Rebbe said to send in Nigunim without words. Nigunim without words. Touches, because like the Frege says, that language is the expression of the mind. Sometimes the tooth gives the mind, the heart, and Megillah is expression of the heart of the soul. It touches something deeper. So in the continuity of the niggin, it's all of a sudden you enter into a different space. It touches something. Everything that Rebbe did was not just arbitrary, you know. It wasn't a noise. Together with the Simcha, there was a very potent force here that was taking place, and it's operational. Ask psychologists; they'll tell you it actually affects internally. The Rebbe is the head of the curve on every single aspect of life. He took us to the next level in the practicality of it. And everything we did, he took us to the next level. Next level. That was the key of it. So, anyways, since we're already been a little while, and I should thank for allowing me to participate in this very important Farbrengen, Chayel, El, Tamirim, etc. As we'll say, that's actually tshuva. The thing, this thing sings up the tshuva. The first thing of tshuva is Tam Tiyam Hashem Alekecha. But you have to be who you are. Tamim, you got to be who you are, man. Chassidus is the biggest compliment about Chassidus that you have to be what's happening. Whoever you are, that's who you are. The guy sees you, that you know who you are. You are a shliach of the Rebbe. You represent the boss. You represent the representative of the Eibishter for this generation. That's it. You are the guy. You, simple you, the Yankel Baruch Shmedel battle, whether you're in Tallahassee, whether you're in Miami, whether you're in Timbuktu, whether you're in Jerusalem, you represent the Rebbe. It's big time. You're big time. You hit the big time. It's a gift. It's a gift of gifts. Over the top gifts. Can't even imagine the level of gift that it is. Can't imagine. I can't imagine it in my own life. Sometimes I pinch myself and say, this simple yid could have been some shman that could walking through the world like anybody else. You know, more successful, less successful. And all of a sudden you are representative of the Rebbe. It's crazy. It's much crazy. It's not normal to think about this chusim that we have, the mila that we have. Don't take it for granted. It's not a business opportunity. This is not a choice of, you're making a choice of what you want to do for a living. This is a high level position. This is a highly responsible position. So Chayel is being the Chayes and El, Chayes and Tanil, they do, and that the rest of El, Mr. Hashem, should transform our lives in a positive way. And in Mr. Hashem, everything should be over the top. So if anybody else wants to continue to Farbrengen, Mr. Hashem, you should continue to Farbrengen.
You know, you're talking about the Rebbe, and you know, like, I remember one time I was sitting here with a guy, with my banker in my office, who was a little upset. Like, you know, we had sold we moved from the old Chabad house to the new Chabad house, and we had to sell the old Chabad house. So it sat down for a while, and the mortgage was collected. We didn't pay the mortgages. I got very upset, and you know, whatever. And the guy had called me to make a meeting to talk to me about this. So he came to me in the meeting, and I didn't know what to tell him, because I sold him this story is that we're going to pay, you're going to do it. I know there's nothing to say. So I told him, I showed him the picture of the Rebbe. I say, see this guy, this is the Rebbe. You know, we are here shluchim with the Rebbe. And I was just telling him, listen, what are we here for? The mission, I had nothing to tell him, you know. So I told him that's, you know, and it worked. This is a guy, you know, so we have to, you know, realize that that's who we are, and you know, you see with the boss, you see with the whatever, you know, when you really live it and tell people this is what the story is, this is who we are, and this is what we're here for, you know, it works. But I'll tell you like this, you know, you're here, you know, I know you're talking for 2 hours, but the fact is, as long as there are not, you know, less than 30 people here. So you have close to 100 people after midnight sitting here. It means that the Chavla wants to hear. The guys are thirsty. Guys are like, the Midbar Shmoma today out here, and Chai Elul comes, and we want to know what's the, just 12 days into Elul, you make a Cheshbon Nefesh every day from starting in Chai Elul on the lot, Tishrei, Cheshbon, Kislev. But I want to ask you, what does it practically mean? Do we remember what we did Elul? Remember what we did Tishrei? Who remembers what they did? Like, you don't keep Cheshbon, whatever. You don't even have time to sit and think what we did, this, that. What's the practical meaning of, getting ready for Rosh Hashanah, 12 days of Elul, every day Cheshbon Nefesh for another Chedesh?
I'm going to give you a brief, just a one word. One word. That's the Nekuda. The Nekuda is to bring a chayes into a day to day. Try. You prepare. See how you're going to daven for the next 12 days. I told you before. It's a simple thing. Just check it out, man. This is not the esoteric stuff. This is not trying to put together a puzzle. Get down the simple factors. I'm telling you, it works. Simple thing. How are you going to daven tomorrow morning? And so on. And don't forget, before we finish, don't forget to make a bracha achrona. And we make a bracha achrona. Say, know what you're saying. Baruch Hashem, whatever the case is, whatever bracha you're making. That's the key. Chayes. Anyway, we'll do it again. We'll Farbrengen again. The more, I'm not trying to finish up because I push it. I promised somebody something here. So I told him that. I told him 11:30, 12 o'clock. Now it's already 12:35 at 12:40. So I'm behind schedule a little bit. But it's Hashem, we'll Farbrengen again. This is we're a Chassidim. We're one family. You have to Farbrengen again.
I want to tell you about the Tanya thing. That the sessions we made about Tanya. So first about the Nigunim, we were sitting with students. It's Friday night, and we were Farbrengen, and we sang Nigunim, and this guy is sitting there, student, and he said, I need another nigun. Like he's like, you see, like he needs it. And I was talking to someone today, another student who walked in this morning, and they used to ask all type of questions about Tanya and about the other Rebbe, and I find out really our sessions with the other shluchim about Tanya was really helpful to be able to convey the message in a much more practical and positive way. I found myself surprised. So I want to let just as a team pact. It wasn't the three sessions.
That's very nice. We should continue to do it, and we should bring. I think you have a good idea. We should bring it a little bit more often. It doesn't have to be every day or every week, but should bring more often. But leave it enough. Guys want to get together, and guys should speak and talk about what's going on in their life and how we can better our existence. And Nekuda that's relevant to that period of time, because every period of time is relevant. Like to me, as I said earlier, Chayes of Elul, there's the theoretical stuff, all that. It's very important. Everything is critical. But Chayes of Elul means life. Your life has to be a different life. That's Chayes. To bring your Chayes into it, to be your life into Elul, not to bring a life force into Elul, to bring your life into an Elul experience. That's the Nekuda. It's a whole different process. It's an internalized process. That's the difference Chabad and Chagas. That's it. Anyway, Chaim Lieden, thank you very much. Anyways,
your mother is here. Your mother must be in her 90s or something. That she's still here, so night listening. I mean, she trusts you.
My mother can hit a hud. She should give her a Yom Shalom tape. She doesn't hear a word you're saying because unfortunately, she's totally deaf. She doesn't know one single word you're saying.
Wow.
But she's thinking that's what they're saying.
Wow.
But Kineda Hadis is almost 100. Not yet, but they should give her Arichas Shalom Tevis.
Amen.
She attributes her longevity. My mother says a very important thing. She's the kind of person that she lost everybody that you could lose in your life. She lost her parents, she lost her husband, she lost her brothers, she lost her child, She lost everybody that a person could lose their life, she lost. So there's a lot of pain in her life in that sense.
When the Rebbe said, you and Khan, that Miami, Khan is start to shake.
Hey, well, Yossi, you gotta mute her.
God, people, driving.
So my mother says that the reason that she has Arichas Yom B'Shalom Tevis is because when she was a little child, her little girl, she was 4 or 5 years old, and the Frierdiker Rebbe was leaving Russia. So my Zayda was very much involved over there. In fact, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave him papers to hold when he was in Leningrad. My grandfather was in Leningrad at that time. So before they left Russia, when he was banished to 1927, so he took my mother, she was a little girl, to the Rebbe Farbrengen. So the Rebbe put my mother says, he put his holy hand on my head. The Rebbe put her hand and she gave her a bracha for Arichas Yom. So she attributes her Arichas Yom for the fact that the Rebbe gave her that bracha. So that's the fact of life, and so forth. So, and the fact of life also is that we have a shaykhs, a very close shaykhs with the Rebbe, because the Rebbetzin Chana, she was on the transport coming out of Russia together with my family, with my father and my mother, my grandparents. They carried me out in a suitcase. I was just born in Tashkent. I had to go through the border.
Yeah.
So he was born. The Rebbetzin was with us at that time. So my father was very much involved with the Rebbetzins coming out and to get through. There was nobody there except for there was nobody there. A lot of very interesting stories. The Rebbetzin had a little suitcase. So Rabbi Mendel, I don't know if the Sefer in Toronto, his son is the head of Tzach in Eretz Israel. That's right. So Mendel, I don't know if he was a single bacher. So he took the Rebbetzin suitcase to carry it. Later on, they found out that in that suitcase was the shefer of the Tzemach Tzedek, and some of the svarim from the Leib. There was the Xavier Bache and the Zehad, as you know, and some other things. So when the Chassidim found out that this suitcase has these things, so the big Chassidim said they'll carry it. So the Rebbe says, no. He carried it when he didn't know it was there, so let him carry it. So there was always a makateva in that way. So on my father's matzeva, my father is by the Rebbe's in Montefiore. So my father's matzeva. So in those years, my father passed away. The Tashman Ches, same year that Rebbetzin. So my father, the Rebbetzin passed away in Chavez Shvat. My father passed away in Chavez Tishrei. So my father's matzevah says, "Ozar harbe batzolas imay shekvei tisha moshelita." So in those years, the matzevahs, the Chavez Kadish used to put it into the Rebbe to okay it. So to okay it. So we have a special shaykhs that way. As well, so that's my mother. So it's part of that transport. Chaim.
Rabbi Shalom Tevis, Rabbi Shlichus, and building project that should be the Malam Teva, able to accomplish it, complete it, and see a lot of nachos.
Amen. Sei gesund. Have a very good night, everybody.
Fine.
Thank you very much again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to take over the Farbrengen? I don't know who's in the call, but anybody who wants to continue Farbrengen, you're welcome to unmute yourself and and share with us your inspiration. Don't be shy. Don't know who is here, but da 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 ya da da ya da ma 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 ya da ya da ya da ya da ya da da ya da da ya da Ya 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 da ya da da ya da da ya da ya da ya da ya ma ya ma ya da ya ya da ya da ya da Wants to share a few words, please. Go ahead. Don't be shy. Share with us a story, an inspiration, about the cities, now Elul. Go ahead. Unmute yourself. It's open. Open for bringing.
Rabbi Orechman.
Yeah.
I heard, I came late, but I heard Rabbi Lipskar speaking about shluchim. I think it's important. I have a few chaverim on the Zoom tonight that they don't have the official title of a shliach. They're not part of Agudas Chabad, but they do a shlichus on an everyday matter. And to know that each one of us, even if we don't, took on ourselves an official shlichus in the town, or even if surrounded still in the Jewish community, but the same keiches that Rabbi Lipskar were talking, and the same achayas, and what we do on a daily basis is on the same level, and we have to take our life seriously. It's like not, I saw that the Farbrengen was very target on shluchim.
No, he always mentions shluchim. He says chassidim and shluchim. When you say shluchim today, every yid is a shliach. Every yid is a shliach. It's very clear that the Rebbe made it that way. That we all shluchim. So if you feel a Lubavitcher, you can not be a shliach. By etzem yimitzias, you go around, you talk to people about tefillin, you share with people inspiration. There's every yid, every chassid today, the Rebbe is a shliach. There's no, by nature, because the Rebbe made us feel that way. So there's no when he says shluchim, he doesn't mean just shluchim. We talk shluchim today. We don't mean just shluchim. There's obviously it's supposed to be a shliach and do that, but every yid is a shliach today. And the Rebbe clearly, if you're chassid of the Rebbe, you cannot be a shliach because the Rebbe, put it so much into us, to our blood, that demanded that from us. That it's like you cannot. If you worked, I don't know. Any Lubavitcher that I know was not in shlichus, in business of work, does some type of a shlichus in their work. They talk to people that they meet with. They put on film with people. You can't. In our generation, you cannot be a shliach if you're chassid of the Rebbe, right?
Can we take this one step forward? Is that the Balabosi talking? And the person that you're dealing with is also a shliach.
Yeah, but
Meaning
that's
that,
a little bit.
so that's the respect. Meaning when it comes to when you make a teva for another yid and you're talking to him, is the achai is that as if you're talking to the Rebbe himself, making it, meaning that the same way we have our response. You know, if I was asked by the Rebbe to come in the meeting, I'll prepare myself, make sure that I have something, and I make sure that whatever is needed for. It's not less when I come and meet another Pashut Yid on the streets and between two business meeting or whatever it is. It's a nefesh elokis that I meet. It's another shliach of the Rebbe, another shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's to bring out that this concept applies to each one, further down and further down, and it doesn't, how do you say, doesn't exclude anybody on that concept. And the same way that when it comes the Rebbe in the room, I'll get up and I will, whatever it is, when the Pashut Yid comes, everything becomes irrelevant. And the shlichus of whatever I'm asked to do, if it's to put on tefillin, if it's to say vatera, if it's to find a way to help the other Yid, it's equivalent as if the Rebbe himself asked me for a teva or asked me to put on tefillin on him. It's not different. I'm just trying to bring in the importance of the whole Farbrengen to apply it in every moment, in every aspect. It's our responsibility. This is what we're here for. Is it and this applies to shluchim, this applies to balabasim, to how do you say, to working Chabadniks, if you want to call it, and then to a regular balabas, or Pashut Yid, or Am Haaretz, or Kal Shebekalim of the Tanya. That how do you say, if I could walk out with this tonight, that would be amazing.
Yeah, well, you know, every Yid is Eibishter. There's no doubt. When you're aware that you have an awareness of something, much more of impactful. You know, you're aware that you're shliach. I'm saying yes, every yes, but sitting with the Rebbe, you know you're shluchim. You're aware that there's a lot more that is happening, ability to impact others. It's really interesting if you think about it. It's really interesting. About Teva, that we have to impact another Yid. Once you're Lubavitcher Chosti, there's an opportunity to put in another Yid. I'm going to say.
Can't hear you much. You have to speak closer to the mic.
I said that there is no. Is it better now?
That's much better.
I said there's no. You don't see any chassid that have an opportunity to impact another Yid that is going to skip on that opportunity. So when you're aware of something, that there's this research done that when you're aware of something, it's much more impactful than when you're not aware of that. Just if you're shliach, you're not aware of that. We have to be aware of that we are shluchim, and we say every chassid is aware of that because of the nature of what the Rebbe, being chassid of the Rebbe, and listening, reading the Rebbe's sichos and the Rebbe's ma'amorim, and it's the Rebbe was that in us, Rebbe is embedded into our teva that we are shluchim. Every chassid of the Rebbe. And it's a schus, but it's a responsibility also. Responsibility.
Yeah.
The biggest responsibility.
Yeah.
The biggest is inspire ourselves. The important of chassidus, the Rebbe talks about so many times about the importance of learning chassidus every day in our life. Because if we learn chassidus every day, we could become completely different people. It's chassidus makes you into a different person, whether you like it or not, want it or not, thinking that you are changing or not. You learn chassidus every day. You're talking about chai Elul, being chayas of Elul. If you want to have chayas in our life, not even talk about chayas in our life, but if you want to live our life, we can live our life without chassidus. You have to make sure that we have our day, every day that we have time to learn chassidus. It's chassidus. Put a life in a. You can not just put life. You can live without chassidus today. You know, and the Rebbe demanded it from us and says whether we're shluchim, whether we're balabatim, whether we're bachrim, we have to make time to learn chassidus, to learn chassidus every day. We make kvius to learn chassidus every day in our life, and today it's so easy, it's so simple because it's so much available online. You can listen to it in your car when you're driving. I was talking to this guy, this Lubavitcher guy, and I was telling him about Chitas Mamam, and he said, I don't have the time. Well, I said to him, do you work, you know, how long you drive to work every day? He said, 45 minutes an hour. So I said, you know, what do you do doing this? Oh, that I said, you know, make yourself time that you listen, everything is available online. You go to Chabad.org/daily study, there's shurim, there's Chitas Mamam, it's all there, Chitas Mamam. You can just put it on your car and you can listen to it. I told him, you know, you can have, you know, you learn Chassidus every day. You listen to the Daily Tanya. The way to work for 20 minutes. It's so easy. You know, it says, Molo Oretz Dias Hashem, Kamay Laim L'chasim, Mashiach will come, Molo Oretz Dias Hashem. It's Molo Oretz Dias Hashem. It's available everywhere. Anywhere. You're in the gym, you walk, you this, you everything. You go, you have an opportunity to be able to learn Chassidus. It's so easy today. We just have to make it into a point in our life that we want to do that. And the Rebbe demanded that. The Rebbe really demanded the letters, countless letters of the Rebbe. The Rebbe talks about, making time to learn Chassidus every day, making a kvius to learn Chassidus.
I would just maybe add to it that I have Baruch Hashem a class of Chassidus every morning, and we went through a tough time. We lost one of our dear chavusas every morning, and I realized that whenever the day that we needed some chizuk, whatever we need, the Tanya was here talking exactly to the point. Now we're going into Elul. We are holding in Perek Lamed Aleph. It talks exactly what we need to hear. It's amazing, almost like you're inviting the Rebbe every morning, and he talks exactly, not just learning Chassidus, but it's exactly what Chassidus needs to talk at that moment. And it would be amazing whenever the few days that I was away or whenever, when you go back to the subject, it's exactly what needs to be here today. That's what I want to say. Chassidus talks to us, and if we just take the time to listen to it.
Which Rebbe was it, the story that it was told him that because he's a Baki in Chitas, he's learning Chitas, and that's why he succeeded in Russia when he was doing.
It was a Yom a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so Chitas is literally, that when you're Baki in Chitas, if you learn Chitas every day, but learning Chitas in a way, again, the Rebbe writes about this, we learned in a way where we take out the bechein from it. We're trying to, like Rabbi Lipskar was talking about earlier, not just to learn the Tanya, but to learn the Tanya and thinking to ourselves, what are we taking out from the Tanya today? What are we walking out with from the Tanya? What I'm walking out from the Chitas, especially the Dvar Malchus, the Chayenu, Dvar Malchus, as I'm saying, just like you have to do Chumash with Rashi today, you have to do Chumash with the Rebbe Perushim, with the Rebbe's things on the Chumash. So in Dvar Malchus, they always put, every day, they put a little 1-2 things from the Rebbe about the Pasha. Just like we're saying Chumash with Rashi, we have to say this as well, because it gives us a completely different perspective on the day, and you come out. I was just thinking about the other day, and the Rebbe made it so nice for us. We're thinking about, like, I'm giving classes, okay, on Zoom, lunch and learn, this, that, and guys are so thirsty, and they say, wow, I needed to hear that, Rabbi. I really needed to hear that. So, and I'm thinking, we're so lucky that the Rebbe took the Torah, 3,000 years old Torah, and the Rebbe made it so simple to us, so practical to us, that that all we have to do is just learn the Rebbe Sichos, and then everything the Rebbe puts. We're talking about the light and the chayus, the eir v'chayus, right? Wait 1 second. The Sichos brought chayus into Elul. So today, the Rebbe brings chayas into the chitas, into the parsha, into the chumash. When you learn the chumash, the chitas with the Rebbe's sichas, with the Rebbe's explanation, it gets a completely different pashut light and life in it. It's pashut, it makes it practical, it makes it relevant. So we are lucky that we have that. There's nobody in the generation was like the Rebbe that took that took such a deep in yonim and made such deep in yonim, bring it into our life, make it so relevant to us. So that's the idea of the practical idea of Chayes and Elul. We take it upon ourselves to learn Chassidus every day, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, listening to the Tanya. There's so much available today that we just have to make it a priority. There's so much time that we have. A guy said that he was making a siyum on the shas. And he said, why he made a siyum in the shas a few times. What this siyum was so important, because at this siyum he made when he was all of his learning was all the time that he was in between things, while he was waiting online for this, while he was waiting for that, while he was, so there's so much opportunity that we have, so much time that we have, and especially today with everything so accessible now, cell phones and our computers and our this, that we could in Chitas today in Rambam so much easier and learn Chassidus more than ever before. We just have to make it a priority into our life.
Make it happen. Good Tavach. Tomorrow they have to go for Chassidus. Sei gesund.
Ayes and Elul. Shreich, good Tavach.
Yeah.
Good Tavach, everyone. Anyone else wants to share something, please feel free to unmute yourself and share whatever is on your mind. Chai Elul Farbrengen. Achona l'Chai Elul. Anyone want to say or add anything? Not, we'll conclude the Farbrengen. I conclude, you never conclude Farbrengen. You only take a break in between Farbrengen. The Iker is Alzain. The Rebbe says, "Va'adus be'ila achlas tevish." We come out inspired with some practical achlatas in our life at the increase in limud Torah, limud Chassidus, and yeah, I get ready for Chayel. Take care. Good luck, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi Frankfurter, for arranging the technical aspect of that and getting Rabbi Schapiro to be part of that. And the recording will be posted soon, I guess.